Files, I'm Brian.
And I'm Brad.
It's been so long since I've been able to use this introduction. Welcome to the tier list, a new thing we're doing since Fast X came out. We're going to tier list all the movies, then do our spoilery review.
We'll do Fast X last, so that way you can watch all the tier list up until that point and then decide whether or not you want to watch Fast X or not.
Yep. The best places, since I'll put in the time code, would be YouTube or Spotify, but sometimes the time code can differentiate because of the audio programs. Let's get into it.
I think we should start with the best movie.
Hobbs and Shaw?
Yes. The absolute best movie.
Little teaser, Hobbs and Shaw is going to be my lowest. So everybody, you can go to the description to see what our different rankings mean. I added the traditional S, A, B, C, D, F, and I added one more, which I'll say in a second. But next to it, I put the emojis that we use for ayahuasca, mushroom, edible, joint, skunky, poison, and Molly, which is the new tier I added, which is the X tier. The movie. You can see why all those rankings are how they are, but for this first one I figured I'd put both to make it easier for everybody. But we're going to go in chronological release date order. How are you in terms of this, Brad? I prefer to rewatch my franchises in release date order. Are you a chronological
It depends on the franchise. Like this franchise I would rather watch in release date order, but something like the Marvel series Cinematic Universe I'd rather watch in like chronological in world timeline order, so that way you can kind of understand a little bit more of things are the way they are, because you get some random movies, especially kind of like some of the more future timeline movies that are talking about specific events, and you're like, well, we don't know anything about that. Why are you talking about this event? Or if you watch it in timeline order, then you'll say, oh yeah, well that happened in Civil War, or that happened in The Winter Soldier. I now understand what they're referring to when they talk about this. So, but like a series like this, where it's not necessarily crucial to watch everything in timeline order, that I don't.
Gotcha. I am still a release date order person for MCU, but I see what you're saying, especially with this one, because having Tokyo Drift as 3 and having it not be resolved until technically Furious 7 is kind of a feature of the franchise. It adds a little bit like, oh, okay, when are we getting to Tokyo? Each time Han can kind of tease that in
and then
Fast
we have
Furious mentioning it in the DR, and then, I thought we were going to Tokyo. We'll get there.
Yeah, and then we have Tokyo Drift, and then it kind of like gets unresolved in 4 because Han's in the beginning of 4, and you're like, wait, he died in 3, and then you realize, oh, this happened before, and this is why Han goes to Japan. So
and even in Furious 6, where it's like, wait, okay, so we still don't know if Tokyo's coming. Does that mean Giselle might die because she wasn't in Tokyo Drift? What's going to happen to their relationship? It adds a extra level of tension for me when I was watching it.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. So in this series, chronological or timeline release order, I said all 3 options, and I'm pretty sure it didn't make any sense. We're watching these in the release order of how the movie's released, starting back in like 2001 with The Fast and The Furious.
Even if it didn't make sense, you're still not going to end up being the most confusing person on this podcast. So you're good. But yes, we should start with The Fast and the Furious, and I'll do as quick as I can a little summary. So this one is where we meet Brian Spillner, but really Brian O'Connor, who's supposed to be taking down Dominic Toretto and his whole family. But when he falls in love with Mia, and then falls in love with Dom for sticking up for him when he gets called the gay F slur word, he has a change of heart and lets them go. Brad, I know I'm going to be more controversial, so let's start with you. Where would so this is how we're going to do the ranking. If I say S tier and Brad says D tier, we'll settle on B tier. So that's how this is all going to go. But Brad, we'll
average out our scores.
Yeah. And if it's an A or a B, whoever feels more strongly will get it. The other person will stand down. Or I'll just be like, ha, movies are dope. That's my
this is the name of my podcast.
No. Brad is not just a trophy co-host. If anything, I'm the opposite of a trophy co-host. Brad, spread your wings and fly. All right, no more delays, Brad. What do you think? Where should The Fast and the Furious go, and why?
This movie is very nostalgic for me. Even rewatching it today, I still kind of get the same kind of feelings that I got when I watched it the first umpteen times, dozen and a half times. I remember spending my own money and buying this this DVD when it came out. So for me, I'm going to go with an A tier. I would say overall it's in my top 4-ish movies out of the franchise, just because it's so nostalgic, and just watching it today, I mean, like, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. So
all right, so that was the sugar. Here's the and I'm gonna put you your spot first, and then that's a bad idea for this because it's just gonna piss people off where it's gonna move. But so my introduction to the franchise was actually Tokyo Drift. I'm not putting in C tier, I'm just putting it here so you can see as a visual, and I loved it. It was pure racing. It for me still, it's the purest racing film out of all the Fast and Furious films. So I'm glad that it's gotten more love as time went on, but it really confused me how it got dogged on so much early days from the original fans, especially since all I hear these days, understandably, is, can't we get racing back? Come on, I want more racing. So that should inform this viewing experience, where I come in and the first 30 minutes is racing-ish with like a heist. And then all of a sudden, Brian Spillner is Brian O'Connor. Everyone said it's Point Break redone. And now we have this whole FBI thing. So the first time I watched it, the FBI came out of nowhere. I was like, it just felt so ham-fisted or shoved in for me the first time. Since I've watched it, it's gotten better in my eyes. But certain things like the third act I felt was really sloppy. They had all these different disconnected parts. Like Johnny Tran comes into the third act almost not at all, except to randomly come in and kill Jesse when he comes back for no reason. He's like, hey, I went away for 30 minutes. If we could, I would have made it all come together, like Jesse's the one who brought Brian and Mia to the heist, and Johnny Tran looking for Jesse comes in and starts messing stuff up even more, and have that all be one big sequence. I'm sure the budget wouldn't have allowed it at the time. This is all just speaking, if possible, dreaming, let's say. So it would have been an F my first time. I'm saying that right here. It would have been an F. Since then, it's kind of a D plus for me, a skunky in the Fast and Furious, or in our movies are dope rating. So you had it as mushroom, you said?
Yep.
All right. It's going to take a lot for me to get to a mushroom, because I think normally I'd put a few up in S tier, but ayahuasca is just like, it's more than S tier. So
well, I'm going to put it like, for me, I'm going to put like ayahuasca as like the top one, maybe top two. So with this being top three is why I'm putting it in my A tier.
Yeah, like me, there's very few ayahuasca movies, like Blind Spotting, I Care a Lot, things like that. But for Fast and Furious, I'll change that for the Fast and Furious tier list. I'll keep it to S. So I'm at D, and I don't feel so strongly that I'd force it to be a C. So how do you feel about a B?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, okay. I could see that.
I don't want to piss everybody off the first.
All right. Well, thanks for half those viewers. I appreciate your time. And, this is your tier rating of the Fast and Furious podcast.
Yeah, I've already, on Thursday I saw Fast X once, and on Friday I saw Fast X twice. So I've already seen it 3 times. I promise I love this franchise. If this was like our last film that we were ranking, I might push more for a C, but I've grown to enjoy it. It just feels so disjointed. Like the action scenes, some of them feel like Speed Racer sequences before the Wachowski sisters did Speed Racer, but then it's also trying to be very grounded and like
have a heavy plot and have real world consequences.
Yeah, and who wrote it? The guy who wrote Training Day and directed the first Suicide Squad movie. What's his name? Like he was the he was the right writer for this movie. The effects that made it look so cartoonish were the wrong effects for me. Okay. It's like, all right, because he made Letty and Mia actual characters instead of boobs with legs. You know how
through like the majority of the series, they're finally starting to actually have like real people nowadays.
Yeah, but if you go back then, you're like, oh shit, like Letty's bossing Dom around.
Yeah.
What movie do we see?
And
the female love interest. Yeah.
And she yells at, what's his name too? The other guy. The red guy.
Mia gets her own driving sequence. Like, this is stuff that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they're like, we're 20 movies in, and Black Widow gets to be more than boobs for the Hulk to fall into in Josh Whedon's movies. So it's great. I just think it was disjointed, and I don't think Rob Cohen's a great director. Hey, do you want to say anything positive before we move on to wash out the
nostalgia-wise? Without this movie, I don't know if I would have continued with this movie, and then the second movie, I don't know if I would have continued without the first movie being as good in my eyes as it was, because we're going to talk about Too Fast, Too Furious. Ooh, boy.
All right, so I'm going to piss people off because I'll go first with this one. Because if I was doing mine solo, this would be at a D, and then I'd put Too Fast, Too Furious at a C. I think it's I think it's delightful, solid structurally. I just don't think it's special. I think it has some good character work. It marries all the ingredients better than The Fast and the Furious did, but it's solid. It's solid. So make people happy. Ruin my C rating. Where would you put it?
I mean, for me, it's a D or an F. For me, this goes between another movie in the franchise as my kind of worst two. And at any given time, it's kind of flip-flops back and forth between the worst one and the second worst one, not including any spin-off movies that happen to have the name The Fast and Furious in the title of it. That's on its own island over in the
in Samoa.
In Samoa, ran and it fell off a 100-story building and happened to survive. But
all right, and I'm very curious to find out eventually what your other lower is, because I was like, maybe he means Hobbs and Shaw when saying that.
Oh no! So I'll put it as a. For me, it's hard to put it as an F because it does function well as a movie.
We can move it to D.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably, when I come to this, I'm probably sitting at a D because I don't think it deserves an F, despite probably one of the worst in the franchise. But it still functions well as a movie overall. It still progresses the story kind of overall. It brings in new characters that will later on be staples in the franchise. So
there's also the Molly.
I'll probably.
I don't know how anything's getting to a Molly. All right, so we'll move it down to a D. I don't feel bad about that. Tokyo Drift. Do you want to go first, or do you want me?
You can go first on this one.
All right.
I think you and I will probably be pretty close on this one.
Okay, so Tokyo Drift is like a top tier Fast and Furious movie for me, even today. It's not gonna, the title sequence where it shows looks like I did it after training for a week and learning visual effects, or just going on Premiere Pro and be like, hey, what preset way to make random letters fly together. It looks bad. Shockingly, it had almost an $80 million budget. Actually, probably not shockingly, because you can see when looking at the behind the scenes, they did a set for the Shibuya sequence where they drift through the pedestrians. They just added a lot of digital background and they did a lot of real stunts. But this felt like, to me, a great introduction to Han, the characters, the idea of racing. It gave a unique spin on it with the drifting. I mean, I'm not even a car guy. I don't normally care for, ooh, oh man, ooga ooga. I like those elements in the later films because it's all about love and family, and it's not just dick measuring. Which into why I don't like one of the movies specifically, because it feels like, oh, you're phoning in the family and you're just, it's all about the flexing this while also flexing this. Everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, as I say, one of those is his arms, one of those is his forehead. Not sure which one's which, but you can figure it out.
And yeah, I get it. Like, people clown on the main guy's accent, but the movie also clowns on it real early, so it kind of never bothered me. My rad. that was the person making fun of the main guy, not the guy. But Sean Boswell, it was a good, solid story. There was inventive transitions, like when he's in the police station and it transitions into the plane, and I just thought it was so good, especially in its nuances. When Justin Lin came in, he was like, yeah, this script is pretty racist. And the studio, to their credit, was like, what would you change? And he was like, all right, bing, bang, boom, let's do this. And let's add in just good texture and good. The fact that this was whenever released, it just seems ahead of its time. Like this would be getting clowned on by the critical drinker if it was today. Like, oh, we got to force. I can't do an impersonation of the critical drinker, but he would be like, "Oh, we're forcing diversity. Why can't it be all white? Why does there have to be a woman with agency?" But I truly love this, and it turned drifting into a beautiful sequence during certain parts, like when Neil is explaining it to his Sean. So for me, it's an A tier. It's a mushroom. What about you?
So to answer one of your questions, this movie came out in 2006. Because, and I'm not going to go this. I won't bury the lead too far. Because of this movie, I was interested in drifting, like a lot of people were at this time. Drifting became like a thing. It's still a thing nowadays, but not nearly as popular as it was back then. But I would imagine that a lot of people, if you talk to like the drifting circuit now, a lot of them watched this movie and became interested in drifting just because it's been now a couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years since this movie came out or something like that. It feels like
it came out 30 years ago based on how my body feels today.
Yeah, not 17 years ago like the movie says it does. I feel like it came out like 3 or 4 years ago based on how sprung I feel and how fast I got out of bed in the morning.
2 or 3 years ago when flip phones were still all the rage.
Yeah. And they had video on those flip phones. That's how far behind we were. They had like FaceTime.
Wait, now I'm thinking about we're back to flip phones. Folding phones.
They had flip phones that had video capabilities that you could like FaceTime video everybody in a group. That's crazy. In 2006. Back in 2006, I think I had like a Razor phone.
And since they did the transitions through all the different cameras on that final track, theoretically, you should be able to flip through everyone's live streams of this race to stay up to date with the race.
So for me, this is probably the 4th or 5th movie. It kind of goes back and forth with another movie based on how I'm feeling. This is the movie I've probably seen the most amount of times. For a while there, was on TV on loop for most weekends. So I know I've seen this movie probably the most out of every movie. I'd probably put it in like a B-, like an edibly minus. I mean,
so then that would make, so this is how I'm going to do it. If that's a B- and this is an A for me, then it would, is that your puppy chewing on a dog? It's adorable.
Sorry, I didn't want to make sure she wasn't choking because the other 2 dogs, because we have one other dog and then another dog's here, and they all ran to her. So I was like,
Hey, no, you're good.
Yeah,
they're okay.
Yeah,
I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yeah, she's staring at me now, so she looks okay.
So doing the math on it in my head, I would see, since we did the Fast and the Furious, you had A, I had D. It ended up being a B-. And since you're giving the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift a B- and me an A, or mushroom and edible, then I'd end up putting it here. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, I'd say it sounds fair. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed if it stayed an A. If you gave it like an A+, I gave it like a B- and it came out to like an A. I wouldn't be opposed to that. This
looks to me like a B+, and then this would be a B- with our average scores. So okay. I'm fine with it being here.
That's fair.
Unless you want it in there.
No, I mean I'm okay in either spot. I think it's a solid movie. I don't think we'll ruffle too many feathers putting it at a B. I think we'd ruffle some feathers if it floated down the list a little bit.
And I'll put this on screen, but I forgot to intro this section. I want to try to make it a thing of naming every 3 movies. Hobbs and Shaw messed it up a little bit. But for me, these 3 movies make the foundation era, if that makes sense. Like, they kind of set the foundation for the rest of the films later on.
For me, I would call this like the racing era. This is when we were actually racing. This is when we actually, had racing as a fundamental part of the movies. There's one movie that's kind of a little bit of an exception to that, but that's a ways down the line. But these 3 movies are foundationally rooted in racing.
Yeah.
Now from these movies on, we kind of go away from racing and more of like criminals kind of section. But
yeah,
for me, this is like the racing trilogy.
All right, so that's where we're at with the racing or foundations era. Tokyo Drift as an edible, the Fast and the Furious as an edible, and then Too Fast, Too Furious as the skunky. Let's transition into what I would call the escalations era, where everything gets more and bigger. For instance, Fast and Furious is a bigger kind of remake of the Fast and the Furious in terms of rebooting the franchise to a degree, but also the opening sequence, and they say this in the special features, is just a remake of the opening heist. They just did it with a bigger, better budget. I'm putting it better in quotes because I think we can all agree that the final sequence is inferior to the Fast and the Furious's final sequence, since one feels real and one feels like it's in CGI tunnels. But for me, I think I liked this more when I saw it before getting more of entries in the franchise. But the opening sequence is great for me, so it ends up as a C or joint. How about you?
This is kind of one of those middle bottom movies for me. I did not like it that much coming out of Tokyo Drift, because we took that hard turn from, and I like the way you're phrasing this next set of three is the escalation, because that's what it really did. It really escalated the heights of everything. It really pushed the boundaries on a lot of things, and it changed them more from local criminals to escalating to global criminals. Because in this movie they go to Mexico and start kind of getting in trouble a little bit in Mexico and crossing the border and stuff like that. Watching it now that we've seen Fast 10, looking back on this movie, it's a little bit better than I remember it being. I know I watched this movie not that long ago, probably in the last year. I would probably say, probably I'd say joint. I'd probably say on the lower end of a joint, but yeah, better than Too Fast, Too Furious, but not nearly as good as a 1 and 3 for me. So C is probably pretty solid on that one.
We got a consensus. Did you say that it was better than the Fast and the Furious, or did you say better than Too Fast, Too Furious?
Better than Too Fast, Too Furious, okay. But not as good as 1 and 3.
I was like, wait, I should. How did I not realize when you're saying C? But I thought I missed her. Maybe I'll cut that out. All right. Next is Fast 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So this, like most of the franchise, I was like, woo-wee! Fast 5, like that whole heist sequence at the end, and everything with the vault. Let's be real, Dwayne Johnson coming in. It didn't show to most fans. We couldn't tell that they had contracts that neither one could lose. We were still in a golden era. But as time went on, and I made a video about it, I realized that Tom caused all this for no reason. He caused Vince's death. The opening sequence is also great with the train heist, but he was just a dick. Like, the guy on the job is like, I get that car. And he just goes, like, your first instruction to us, you are paying us. So I knock it down to an A, which, by the way, if this was compared to all the films on the podcast, the review, it would probably be a B, because it's not a blind spotting for me. None of these films are, but there will end up being blind spotting or ayahuasca movies on this tier list. But for me, it ends up as a mushroom in context of the Fast franchise, because it is hugely entertaining, but it doesn't have a good villain. It has a very generic villain. Even on the director's commentary, Justin Lin says, so this scene, the bad guy's doing the bad guy thing. He kind of says, we figured it, like, we had to do this here. So this was our best guess, kind of deal. And also, Dom causes the whole thing and then gaslights Brian and says, should he call O'Connor? It's like, what? You're a dick. Or not, you're being a dick right now. And also, yes, you should listen to Vince more often, because Vince would be alive if you did. But undeniably, it's a bop. And starting with Furious 6, you're going to start giving your ranking first, because I forgot.
No, we're good. For me, Fast 5 is definitely, it rotates with 1, depending on how I feel. Mm-hmm. So 1 and 5 are those two that are just like, well, depending on how I'm feeling that day.
Okay.
So I would put it as an A tier also, because I'd put the Fast and the Furious in what as the A tier, as the mushroom tier too. So yeah, I have no problem with where it's sitting right now.
Another consensus.
Yay.
That'll probably break with the next one. Furious 6, even though the poster does say Fast and Furious 6 and all the promotional materials. But in the movie and on the director's commentary is confirmed, it is canonically called Furious 6, so that is Fast 5 and Furious 6. Where, sir, does this movie, which was originally going to be 2 parts, rank for you on the tier list?
For me, this edges out the other favorite movie of the franchise. So for me, this is probably my favorite Fast and the Furious movie to date. So with that being said, I think it would have to go in the S tier just because in the franchise, it is, for me, the best movie and it edges out the other best movie that everybody else likes.
We are consensusing again because this one. By the way, we still have 5 episodes in the can. I don't know if we'll ever actually do it as a podcast, but I got a long running podcast because I still need to get my shit together with the Bond Minute Bonds to have those. I have a better schedule, but eventually we're going to release the first 5 episodes that we recorded where we were going to put Furious 6 and Fast 5 against each other 1 minute at a time. But
or was it 6 and 7?
No, it was 5 and 6. The origin of it came from me saying, why is Fast 5 the best for all fans? Because Furious 6 has always been just a bit better for me. But yeah, it's still my favorite of the franchise because I love, as I've told Brad before, just huge casts somehow making an entertaining film that never drags and everything is perfectly balanced. So that's Furious 6 for me. It really benefited from being 2 films that got smushed into one because it has the tank sequence and the plane sequence. And I love it. It did such a great job.
It does so much on setting up all of the rest of the movies in this series from now Fast 5, but before, a couple weeks ago, Fast and Furious 6 was kind of the bridge that pushed everything else, that connected everything else together. It brought the motivation for 7, it brought the characters for 8 and 9 and now 10. So the whole cast from this point on, this is where the cast is, with the exception of the late Paul Walker. But with that being said, the entire cast is in this movie from this point on, and they really did a really good job of melding everybody's story together, not only having the big action sequences, but also having a story pushing everything forward and pushing the franchise forward. So this is a really good cap from the escalation tier, the escalation set to the next 3 movies, 4 movies, however you want to characterize those.
And one thing I really like about the franchise is even though Leo and Santos take a back seat in later movies, they never forget them, which I adore in terms of this franchise. Like, it's not just respecting Paul Walker, it's just respecting everyone who took the time to, I don't know, what's the phrase? Give a bar. I fucked that up. There's some movie that's musical that's like, Hustle and Flow. I just want to add my bar to the. Never mind. I'll cut it out. I won't cut it out because Brad laughed at. Watch Hustle and Flow. Let's just keep going. Did you have anything else for Furious 6?
No. Anybody that thinks it's not the best movie is wrong. And moving on to the other movie that everybody gets choked up at, and a lot of grown men cried, and they will admit that they cried at the end of this movie, Furious 7, which obviously has the touching tribute at the end to the late Paul Walker, who died during the filming of this.
This and Merlin and Kingsman: The Golden Circle. The 2 things I see on TikTok so much where it's just like, real men cried.
Obviously, it had a lot of good music. It had the song that got played on the radio for years, it felt like, after this movie. What was it, See You Again? Or I forgot what the official title
was.
Yep.
Sorry. Before you say your ranking, I'm going to piss people off, but I'll explain it when it gets to me. This, for me, the next 3 movies is the disappointment era.
So 7, 8, and 9. Okay.
7, 8, 9. I will explain when it's my turn. Don't get too pissed off. I understand. But
I kind of have an understanding of why that is. For me, this would be floating the line between S and like an S tier and like an A plus. So I'm good with either spot, really. This is a lot of people's favorite movie. I understand why. It does kind of still connect with the big cast. It obviously has the bigger emotional backdrop of losing Paul during this movie, which is felt throughout the rest of the movies. So I would put this as an S tier and A tier. Solid story, solid action sequences. Yeah,
All right, so
I'd be good in either spot.
I'm going to make everybody happy and push it to an S tier. It is below 6 for me.
Yes.
And I'll explain why. But to explain the disappointment era, as I titled it, obviously Paul Walker dying is a disappointment. That's an unintentional one, but it's relevant to the title. The reason why this is the first in the disappointment era, more than that, is because it is, even without having to factor in how to write out Brian on screen, this is a very sloppy movie. And I don't think it's James Wan's fault. He had to do a lot. He had to bring in all these disparate elements that have been left hanging since Tokyo Drift and Fast and Furious brought Han back. So we had to wrap up Han's death, pay off the tease of Jason Statham coming back to get revenge for his brother Owen Shaw. We had to resolve Letty's memory issues, which I admire. I admire this franchise not just doing... First, they did it amazingly well in 6, but they didn't resolve it even fully by then. They gave it another movie to resolve things and take their time, as opposed to like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, which is just like, no memory loss? Yeah, memory loss. Oh, memory loss is gone. Oh, but that was very sloppy. These movies take their time and do it well, but then we have this extra element of Mr. Nobody, and then this God's Eye and Ramsey and Jakande, I think his name is, by Jimon Hansu, and this extra mission. And then Deckard Shaw is coming in, kind of chasing them like behind, like, no, but I'm still trying to shoot you. Boo boo. Like, let me throw a wrench into this sequence, into this sequence. So ultimately, it's a very disjointed, kind of sloppy movie. In terms of that, I would put it below Fast 5. In terms of that, I might even put it below Tokyo Drift, even though it is entertaining. But the last act is like this game of hot potato with a drone, which is fine. Like, it was entertaining the first time, but on a rewatch recently, I'm like, this is very dark and not super visually interesting. The biggest part was Dom and Deckard doing their street fight. But with that ending, which I just have to give a tip to the hat to Chris Morgan, the series writer who wrote Tokyo Drift, Fast and Furious, Fast 5, Fast and Furious 6, Furious 7, or Furious 6, Furious 7, and jumped ship to Hobbs and Shaw, which is where he kind of got ousted, the whole...
Got a little loose.
He kind of got kicked out of the franchise with F9 in terms of writing credits. At this point, they're like, you chose the wrong alpha male to go with, Chris. He just said he sat down and wrote that whole beautiful ending, which elevates this to S tier. As sloppy as it is, it can't take the top spot for me because it is so sloppy with all those other parts, but it brought the emotional impact, and that was enough to, for me, elevate it to S tier.
Watching it for the first time, going through the theaters, and watching everybody walk out in tears. I mean, that shows how much of an emotional connection that movie made to everybody. Yeah, I would say I understand why this would be the disappointment tier. This movie started bringing in some of the fan servicey because of all the emotional things that are happening off screen. So it really brought an emotional charge to everything. And I would say that the next two movies and the disappointment plus one.
That's the disappointment extra credit.
They cram so much like fan servicey things. They kind of get away from what made them so popular. Seeing the emotional response that they were able to do with Paul's death and the tribute to him at the end of that movie, and finding, they found that a lot of fan service could be had, and you could put that fan service in and people would react to it really positively. And so the next two movies, for sure, they just cram so much fan servicey stuff in there that they kind of get lost in the shuffle of things, but we'll get there.
Gotcha. All right.
So for me, I agree with the disappointment tier, just for a slightly different reason.
All right. The next one is Fate of the Furious. Brad, where are you bringing this, or how would you like to talk about it?
For me, this is probably out of the main series, and again, we're going to crap on Hobbs and Shaw the whole way through this thing. And it's not going to stop at this one. This is probably my second least favorite movie of the franchise. This for me, probably D tier, probably the Skunky. At best, it's like a Skunky plus. It wasn't for me. It wasn't a very good movie. I didn't connect with it at all.
What was your rating for Too Fast, Too Furious?
I think it was a D because I don't think there's anything in this tier list outside of one movie that would really considered Poison or F tier, like the bottom of the barrel.
All right. Okay. All right. So I must have had Too Fast, Too Furious at C. I'm already forgetting. Would you put it for you? Would you put it above or below Too Fast, Too Furious?
Above.
Okay. I'll just leave that there for now. It might move. I haven't decided.
So for me, this movie's disjointed. The Dom being like emotionless through this entire movie really kind of wore on me towards the end of that movie. They tried to add the emotional killing of Elena, the Brazilian cop, and it just didn't connect well. Yeah, the best part of this movie was probably Deckard Shaw's mom, and even then was probably but yeah, I would say it's above Too Fast, Too Furious for me, but not by too much.
Gotcha.
This movie also is the first time in the franchise that, you know, the group separates into two through most of the movie, where Dom's kind of doing his own thing and the rest of the group kind of does their own thing. They have their own plot line, and Dom has his own plot line that eventually comes to a head at the end when we see Gal Gadot's character die at the end.
Wait, what?
So for Fate of the Furious,
Giselle died in 6.
Oh, in 6? Oh yeah, because this is the one with the submarine.
Yeah.
The submarine breaking through the ice. But then we still see this is the one with Elaine dying at the end. Yeah. I just didn't connect with me very much, especially after coming off the heat of 6 and 7. 5, 6, and 7, really. Yeah. And then a pretty big disappointment for me.
All right. So for me, this movie definitely is lacking compared to 5, 6, and 7. But I don't feel as strongly about the negative aspects. Like, it is very disjointed how Owen Shaw just comes in essentially for like 2
to babysit.
Cameos. Yeah, he babysits, he babysits the pilot. He doesn't even fight. Deckard Shaw does the fighting in there, but all you see is Owen like look at the back. It's like, yep, I don't have. You are right, brother. I do not have a good relationship with backs of planes. And then after Deckard Shaw goes around and kicks everybody's ass, you just see Owen like with the pilot. He's like, yep, just keep flying. You're good. So there are lacking elements in there, although I do see that as kind of a plus in terms of what I was saying earlier with Leo and Santos, how they never forget them, or an F9 with the guy who's like, again? Like the broken nose.
The FBI officer or whatever.
Yeah, it might be unsatisfying, but it's kind of like, oh, that's nice that they're still remembering them. For me, though, the whole Elena storyline and why he's there is so powerful, or was. It's lessened a little bit for me, but I thought, one, beautiful way to bring in a kid without forcing Letty to just be like, yep, I got a belly for 9 months doing nothing. Or, you know, like elegant way to bring it in. It does make everybody laugh. Like, what, she was just pregnant for like 2 movies hanging out. But if you smush everything together to be like a 4-month period, like it works, or a 9-month period or something like that, 1 year from Fast 5, or I guess Furious 6 through Fate. It works. It works. Also, I do want to shout out Furious 6. I forgot to say how they wrap everything up with the memory loss and Elena's relationship at the end, where it's like where Letty is talking to her and is like, "Thanks for taking care of him. He's a wonderful guy," and they're not catty at all. And then when Dom comes over, he's like, "You know, you don't have to go." Like, I was like, "Oh, this is beautiful. Like, this is you dig." Anyway, this one I would put, because it is entertaining and there are good dynamics, like where he's firing at Letty in the air and then he lets her go and then he has to point his gun at the Game of Thrones guy. I would put it as a B. It's severely lacking in, we feel Paul missing.
Yeah, his presence, is definitely missing through the movie. But for Dom, just the emotionless Dom, yes, I understand why he has emotions and he can't show the emotions. but having him like mummy his way through most of this movie just feels.
I also really liked the opening chase sequence. A weird thing, but I think if Paul Walker was still around, I feel like he was the glue that like kept all the testosterone relaxed, you know? So all the weirdness behind the scenes with the candy ass drama, that you can feel that. So for me, with it averaged out, do you think our average would be higher or lower than Fast and Furious?
Probably a little higher, because I'm putting this at probably like a D plus, and you're putting it, if you put it at like a solid B, I bet you it's probably a little bit higher.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, the whole sequence with the submarine, I thought it was entertaining. Roman with his
outside of the obvious issues.
Yeah.
The same way with 6 with the infinity ending runway. This has the same problem with like the infinity ocean length or bay length for that submarine to get out of. But
the main thing that I think this movie needed to if there was one thing they needed to change, was take Little Nobody's car and just don't make it fucking blue. Make it any other color. Make it green, make it yellow, make it anything, but having a handsome white dude relatively in the same age range of Paul Walker with a bright blue car the movie after Paul Walker passed away. Ooh, man, the franchise did not, or the fans did not like that. They were like, you trying to replace him? What the fuck? You just color coded like he's a fucking Power Ranger? Like, oh, we got a new Blue Ranger. No, it would have been fine if they had just changed it from any color but blue.
And probably not orange. Yeah. They could have made it red, which would have been okay. They could have made it white, which would have been hard to see in the snow. Could have made it green. Green would have been okay. They could have like given it like a gray hue of something would have been okay. Even like a grayish blue hue would have been okay. Yeah. But to have it blue is just yeah.
But I think everyone should go back and like even the sequence in New York where Dom's fighting against his old teammates and the hooks. It is some of the best action in the franchise. It just was missing something, some intangible factor for me.
Ooh, come on, let's do it.
All right, so we're not quite out of the disappointment era, but here's the extra credit. Hobbs and Shaw. I'm just gonna put it as here, so I'm not holding it. It's an F for me because it's not a Fast and Furious film. It's just so much of it. The dialogue between the two main characters is a dragged out SNL sketch. I know what it was. It's your whiny little nasally voice. It's like having bulldog testicles in my eyes. It makes it burn. And it's like your British voice. It's like it's just all the contract of we need everything to be even is so sloppily done
and apparent.
Yeah. Bless his heart, but the guy David Leitch we've reviewed and I think enjoyed Bullet Train, but that's a lot of close quarters fighting no matter what it is, and that's what this movie does. And if you think about it, like doing a satisfying action movie with cars has to be so fucking boring, because it's doing an action scene, but every take you have to reset all these like 3-ton cars and devices and everything to make it work. Whereas with people, it's just like, okay, throw the fake punch. Ha. Okay, reset. Aha. It's so much easier. So I think they just didn't get a good action director or good non-fist fight action director. Like the A-Team, if you look it up with Bradley Cooper and everybody, that's what Hobbs and Shaw should have been, and I don't think they did that. Everything that is a action scene with cars, action with car is a discount previous of a previous movie. Like Hobbs and Shaw ends or almost ends a discount Furious 6 plane sequence. And all these things. And also, this is where Hobbs is just Dwayne Johnson. I thought it had happened earlier, but Fate of the Furious still had some actual Hobbs there. But now it's just Dwayne Johnson, and his whole speech about if she wants to climb this mountain, she can do it. She's a woman, and women are fierce. Great in a bubble, great idea in a bubble, except when you think about the fact that this movie cast the two most popular young female action stars of the time, one with Isaac Gonzalez and Baby Driver, just like, oh yeah, we'll grab her. And then one with Vanessa Kirby and Mission Impossible Fallout, was it? No, Fallout. It's like, okay, we'll just grab her. And then they both kiss us. We get an even kiss. One kiss only for each of us, but we get kiss. And it's like, okay, well, Helen Mirren wasn't added to the franchise because they were like, all right, she's a 20-something or 30-something in a big franchise. Like, no, that'd be a great idea. Holy shit. Helen Mirren in a Fast and Furious movie? That's wild. And Idris Elba deserved better. He should have fought Dwayne Johnson. It could have been a fist fight, but using his fucking tech motorcycle. Like, can you imagine Idris Elba coming into a hallway with Dwayne Johnson, never letting go of the wheel, and this motorcycle is just like driving on the walls, going around him like some extra Transformers arm? It could have been so cool, but yeah, everything was half baked. The feminist messaging is total bullshit because they needed kissies, and it's an F for me as a fast movie. As a normal movie, it'd probably be like a C or a D joint or a skunky, but as a fast film, no dice. Great cast, horrible execution.
Because it says the Fast and the Furious presents on the top of that thing, this movie is. I was trying to look it up while you're talking there, and I couldn't find it fast enough. But I believe the name that The Rock took, or that there was given to get on the plane, was Huge Janus.
It was Mike Oxmall.
Oh, yeah.
He gives Jason Statham Hugh Janus in the mid-credits scene.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay. Yeah. If this didn't have, and there's a lot of things that I can think of off the top of my head, or other franchises where if you took off the franchise name, the movie would be not bad, or the video game would be not bad. But because you have that franchise tag on it, which means it goes with those sets of movies, it is bottom tier of this thing. In a bubble, take off Fast and Furious. For me, it's probably like a mid C, maybe like a Molly C kind of thing. Like, it's funny, it's crazy, it's kind of wacky. The Rock falls off of like a 30-story building and somehow lands at the bottom just fine. And then he falls for like 3 minutes. I'm a big Idris Elba fan, so that would help me out too. So it'd probably be like a C, like a Molly C. But with the Fast and Furious tag on it, definitely an F. I mean, I can't believe you even would consider making a second movie of this. I would be more enticed to just burn it and just pretend like it never existed. And there's another movie I'm going to use in short quotes. Was it Los Bandoleros, which is the movie between 3 and 4 that it shows Dom and Letty getting married.
Yeah, the short film,
the 10-minute short film that you can watch on YouTube. That goes way above this movie.
Oops. I can't get rid of that screen. I'm going to look at it separately.
Yeah, I think it's called like Los Bandoleros.
It is. I just thought it was 40 minutes for some reason. So let me find that.
Oh, I thought it was like 10, because there's another one too called like Fast and Furious High Octane, which was filmed between 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's
or something like that. That was a little maybe I'm gone backwards then. I thought the High Octane was a little longer.
That might be right.
No, you might be right. Your memory is better than mine. I just seem to be able to pull things from mine.
20 minutes and 23 based on Vimeo. Yeah, like, and there's also, I forgot to mention, the plot is Mission Impossible 2. Not great. Great introduction of Idris Elba. Who are you? Bad guy. Like, great. It's perfect, like Fast and Furious dialogue, except then the movie has this whole weird, like, Etienne thing that never gets really resolved. Like they blacklist them on every news organization, but why? Like they Hobbs and Shaw gets recruited. Obviously, the agency knows they're innocent, or the CIA, is it? I can't even remember. I think it was the CIA. Ryan Reynolds was perfect. That was amazing. The cheat day was silly because that's not Hobbs, how he was handling himself. But then the whole outline of the film is basically, okay, 2/3 are we're using Jason Statham's character. And then once the film is done, let's add 30 minutes for Dwayne Johnson because he's producing in Samoa. It's just
and then has his family help him out, and they help him out but kind of don't help him out, and his brothers or cousins or whatever in Samoan outfits and stuff. It felt super weird.
It's kind of like they to bring it to Furious 6, it's kind of like they were like, we're going to do 2 films. First one can be Jason Statham's. The second one can be Dwayne's. And it'll be the Shaw and the Hobbs. And then they'll squish them together. But I mean, if they had done something just a little bit different, like a White Collar thing, if anyone saw the White Collar TV show on USA, it's about this career criminal who's caught by the FBI handler who's been chasing him. And in order to get released, he becomes an informant to help the FBI. And it's a cool show. It's good. I'd recommend it. Just do that. Show the last barbecue in Fate of the Furious. Have Shaw go back into custody, and then say, all right, we've got this mission. If Shaw does it, he can get released, and Hobbs will be his handler. And have him have an electric shock collar for the first half of the film, and Hobbs is being a dick, fucking with him. They get caught by Idris Elba, where they both get shocked, and then now the tables have turned, and Jason Statham kind of gets to fuck with The Rock for a little bit, and they escape, and bing bang boom, and do the film like that. I don't know. And I like the Samoan family. Just figure out a way to have them.
It just felt completely, it just felt completely disjointed. It kind of felt like they wanted to go with one of those scenes where, like, all right, we want you to go back to your family. We want you to remember why you're fighting. We want you to like kind of build that family atmosphere, and then take that pride with you and go back. Like, you kind of got your tail whipped. You got your running home with the tail between your legs and kind of getting that pump back up to go beat the bad guy. It's kind of like they felt like they wanted to go something like that. It just didn't. It felt so disjointed. And it felt kind of out of the left field. Where, like you said, if they would have had them kind of sprinkled throughout the movie, or if even something as simple as like have them meet in the beginning of the movie, have him like try and get a hold of him during one of the action sequences. And, The Rock drops his phone, but you can see that they're calling on the screen as he's like fighting in the background or whatever, just to kind of bring it back to your attention instead of just like at the end of the movie, like, oh, here's a whole big sequence. And you kind of have no real reason why outside of their just family.
Yeah. And I was also going to dock this points for just not giving a shit about continuity. Like, they recast Hobbs's daughter, which I don't know why. There's 1,000 reasons why she was recast. Maybe the actress didn't want to come back, but who knows? But truly. But the thing is, in Furious 7 and Fate of the Furious, that kid's a teenager. And then in this movie, they say that Hobbs's daughter is 9 years old at the cheat day. Also, rewatching Fate of the Furious, they say she's with your sister, your daughter, to Hobbs when he's in jail. And in this film, no sister. Like,
dude.
No sister that he's talking to, even. If there's a sister on Samoa, it still would have messed with the continuity, because Fate of the Furious shows that he's in contact with some of his family. So in this film, we could have had, I don't know, just say that she's 14. Even if it's recast, you can be like, all right, well, they're continuing the character. But just have the sister come in as this like badass sister early on. Now you've got the family aspect. Now you can hint at, well, maybe we make amends or something. Tease that till the end and bring in the family at the halfway mark. I don't know. There's just, even if we were doing that White Collar pitch that I had, there's a point where everyone's in jail in the A-Team, and Face, played by Bradley Cooper has like it hooked up in jail. He's got a tanning bed. He's walking around in a robe with a towel over his shoulder. He's got like I think he had a lady in prison. I don't know, but you could totally.
I think it was one of the security guards, if I remember right.
Oh
like
yeah, yep. You could have.
It's been a long time since I've seen the movie. Yeah.
But that feels like how Shaw might be in jail if he just had some time to woo everybody. Like it could have been really fun. And Helen Mirren. Oh, also not bringing back Owen Shaw. Like really, no respecting any continuity for anyone. Bring back, even if we have the weird flashbacks where Jason Statham is supposed to be believed to be a 30-year-old who looks 50, since him and Vanessa Kirby are not the same age. Bring back Deckard or Owen for a little bit.
I don't remember if she was in that movie or not. Off the top of my head, I don't remember if Deckard's mom was in that movie.
She is. This is the one where she's like, just bring me a birthday cake filled with C4. But we didn't check. What was your rating? Is this a consensus?
Yeah. This is, if you took Fast and Furious off there, it wouldn't be a terrible movie. It'd be a normal Rock movie. It'd be a normal Dwayne The Rock Johnson movie where he's got to be big and bad. But you put Fast and Furious on this title, and you kind of ruin it. It just slides so far to the bottom that I would put probably I would probably put the cartoon, which was pretty bad, probably still above Hobbs and Shaw.
I saw the first season of Spy Racers, and I thought it was pretty good, pretty solid. It channeled the
Bandoleros, High Octane, everything. Any fan fiction movies that you want to come up with on YouTube? You want to make some, a fanfic book of, some pornographic book. It's probably going to go above Hobbs and Shaw. I mean, you can make everything.
The 1.5 minute of driving around for those YouTube channels that want to do a little extra before they review, better than Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah, every YouTuber that has gone to the house and taken a picture in front of the house or the store, or even one that you thought might have been the house, but it wasn't actually the house, probably still better than this movie.
Any idiot who made an 11-hour Grace and Frankie video and had one of those summaries be in front of the house, walking away sweating because it was a very hot day and they were nervous about talking around people, and then ended up in their car. I won't say that's better than Hobbs and Shaw. But okay,
but if Grace and Frankie's your jam, I got a video for you.
All right, now I have to go down a little bit just to get back to the titles. But for the final movie in the what I'm calling the disappointment era, I'm going to just put it in the X spot so I can get positioned back. But Brad, where would you put F9?
This is a middle of the road movie. This is, for me, too fan servicey. They brought back basically everybody besides people that we wanted to see. Like they didn't bring back Giselle. They didn't bring back Jesse in this movie.
I think we're the only people who have talked about Jesse returning.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, Jesse.
At some point they got to bring him back, because we'll get into this here in a minute. But I mean, in this movie, they brought back basically anybody that's ever died in this franchise. They brought him back, and then they added what's his name? Can't See You wrestler, John Cena, who now Dom has a brother and Letty has a brother Mia has a brother that they've never talked about through 8 other movies, not even hinted at. I did like some of the sequences as they were children. I did like to see kind of like a little bit of a prologue of how they grew up, because they did talk about in the first movie. I think they bring it up in the 4th movie too, about their dad and how, kind of his thing. So it was nice to kind of see that play out.
I remember everything about my father. That one was in 5.
Yeah. I didn't like the motivation behind John Cena to have him cut the fuel line or cut the line in the beginning part of the movie. Lucas Black. Lucas. He's looking real well in this movie. I like that they brought back all the other Tokyo Drift characters, kind of like as another fan servicey moment. It's
only because I accidentally dropped it. Where's your rating?
I'm probably going C. I mean, it's probably, for me, it's above 8. but probably not as good as one or three. Not, it's probably wouldn't touch one or three.
Okay.
It's above 5, or it's below 5. So yeah, it's probably solid T, maybe solid joint, like a C plus, maybe like a edibly like B minus, kind of floating that line. But it's a solid movie. It's fine. I don't have a problem with the movie. Good action sequences. The prequel part of it, the chasing through, I forgot what city it was, London, Rome, whichever city it was. I think it was London because we see what's her name,
Helen Mirren.
Helen Mirren. So it was a good movie. Yeah, it was solid.
Yeah, for me, I'm not gonna go C, but I'm not going much higher. Like when I first saw it, I was riding high. This was A tier, maybe S tier, like not higher than these two, but trailing kind of around this area because it was Justin Lin just coming back, kicking ass, doing some great sequences, but also just having some really disjointed and unsatisfying parts, like the whole ziplining sequence. They released a clip of Dom tackling Jacob and them fighting in that boutique or whatever, and the editing was so terrible that I was like, wait, why are they releasing this clip before the movie? Because there's one point where, just watch, Dom throws Jacob, but the shot beforehand was like no one was in position for Dom to grab Jacob. They just kind of jump cut in the sequence. It was bad. That whole sequence for me was really unsatisfying and pretty sloppy. But then we had huge heights like going to space, which wasn't just cool for me, but actually hit really emotionally when Tyrese Roman was talking to Tej Ludacris and saying like something like 2 kids from like the streets are here, and I was like, holy shit, even if they don't die, this is hitting the feels. I think they did a really good job with the flashbacks, but ultimately John Cena had like what they said less than 15 minutes of screen time in this movie. He did a good job, the Suicide Squad showed how to really use him. And then
Peacemaker, really, the TV show Peacemaker.
Yeah. And then the redemption, the giving the keys just happened way too fast. If I could have rewritten this, I would have had the meeting with Michael Rooker in the present day maybe saved for 10 or put right at the end of the film after everything had been resolved, or a mid-credits scene, because them doing the I'm giving you the keys was way too early for the modern day. And I'll get into some of that with the Fast X review, but it was very disjointed. So I think I would settle today on like maybe a B plus with Tokyo Drift, which you were at C, right?
I was at like C plus B minus. Yeah.
Okay. So would you be down for average? For me, I'd put it below Tokyo Drift, but above the Fast and the Furious. So averaging out, would you be down if it's an edible? I don't know. What do you think? Best joint or worst edible?
I would probably say worst edible.
Okay.
They do know that they're kind of, they do know that through the last couple of movies, they're getting a little ridiculous. They poke fun at themselves. People before this movie were joking about, they haven't gone to space yet. They need to make a space movie. They make fun of themselves by, we're invincible. We can't die. Look at my jacket. Look at all these bullet holes. And I didn't get hit once. So they kind of know that they're getting ridiculous in some of the stuff, especially some of the stunts. And they kind of poke fun at themselves, which I appreciate them having like breaking that fourth wall kind of like, all right, we know that we're getting to this point. We're going to kind of poke fun of ourselves for doing this. Yeah. But just like James Bond, they needed a space movie. I think Fast and Furious eventually just needed a space movie. Eventually they're going to go under the ocean and like have like an ocean themed movie at some point in time, probably a Ramsey and Tej spinoff where they steal a submarine and they're underwater for an entire movie. But
I do have a pitch for an ocean-esque movie called Atlantic Drift.
Oh man.
Also, I think Justin Lin was like figuring out how to continue the more ridiculous nature, like the God's Eye or the submarine things, and I'll get into this during the Fast X review. I think he corrected that. If he had done Fast X, we'd be like, oh, this is one of the best Justin Lin Fast movies, and fix the problems with F9. Like the whole, oh, this will break into literally any computer, sounds like he's trying to do Nightshade, but for the Furious 7 era. And just like, it's too ridiculous. The having Han come back is cool, but having those elements of, oh, well, you had a projection of me driving the car the whole time, and also I saved this child who's magic because of her DNA. Just Justin Lin needed to make this, to tone this down a little bit to really get into the groove of things. But there was so much honestly great stuff to this. I mean, the Tarzan swing was, I loved it.
Tarzan with a car.
Yeah, I was here for it. Beautiful. And they do something similar in Fast X with just a car flying through the air wildly. I thought it was great. So there were some of the highest highs of the franchise, but some of the just there. Wait, can we get Chris Morgan for just one pass? Like, Chris Morgan seems like the glue on the script level where, like, yeah, Michelle Rodriguez said before doing this film that if they can't be more creative with the female characters besides getting pregnant, she's going to leave. And, take the L on that, Chris Morgan and Justin Lin, because he was helping develop it, and Vin Diesel. But I think Chris Morgan really took the crazy cocaine brain ideas of Vin Diesel. And that's not me saying Vin Diesel does cocaine, but that's the only way I can describe a brain that comes up with magnets and fighting submarines. That's cocaine brain. I think Chris Morgan really smooths out the cocaine brain ideas in this. Yeah.
And they finally have a scene with Michelle Rodriguez and Mia having a conversation for the first time in the franchise, and this is 9 movies, 10 if you count Hobbs and Shaw, that they finally have a conversation with the two of them. Like, how can you have this thing not have a scene with those two people talking? 2 of the original 5 family members not have a scene together in 9 movies just blows my mind.
Also, the easiest place to bring back Han would have been that whole jungle sequence. Like, have Mr. Nobody send out the word to Han and the Fast family, and then you get him back instead of the, oh, well, he sent a postcard that said Mexico, and you went to the address, and then you saw Mexico in a window. All right. Like, if it didn't have such a weird techie explanation for how he survived, that probably would have worked. But with it being convoluted and convoluted.
Yeah, they needed a ridiculous reason because everybody watched him die and blow up. So they needed a ridiculous reason of how to get him out of there, not seen. But I think that was probably one of the roughest parts of that movie. Like, timeline wise, of like how to get Han back in that movie. It was going to be tough no matter how they sliced it, to get him out of that car, blowing up, nobody sees him, and him not. But I also didn't buy the end of it when Lucas got to see him, and the original Tokyo Drift guys got to see him, and they're just like, oh shucks, he is alive, isn't it? Would you like a hug? No? Cool, I'm eating this plate of food. I'll just put this plate of food down, I'll come get you. Oh no, let me get some more beans. Yeah, more beans? Okay, I'll come give you a hug now. It just didn't feel like, if you saw one of your best friends die, and then 10 years later they didn't die, and you found them or they came up to you, you'd have a stronger reaction than just like, I see what you did there. This is great.
Honestly, I'd be okay. So I'm saying this because the fans just want it. But if we're ever going to get Giselle back in the Fast films, I would have totally been satisfied with the idea of, okay, Mr. Nobody just has this room with like comatose people that he's like helping bring back to life or keep alive somewhat, somehow. And he just has Han there and Giselle there. They're both, they could have died. Technically, they could have been very close to death.
They're holding hands. two tables.
like alien bodies, but holding hands.
Wait, alien bodies? You know my Atlantic Drift pitch?
Is this a remake of Indiana Jones and the
I'm not
Crystal
kidding.
Skull?
There are aliens in my Atlantic Drift pitch. There are. That's why it's called Atlantic. But like honestly, just would have been fine with me if maybe we found out that Mr. Nobody brought Han back to life maybe 6 months earlier beforehand, and he's like, "Do you want to rejoin your family?" Or he could have just been on the crashed plane. Like, all right, we got to take this thing. Clearly, this is important. Let's get the ball. Like, we know about the ball, the half ball, and this other thing. And it's just Han in like a cryo chamber. It says he like ready to be woken up or something. Like, we find out that for the last 9 years, Hans, or however long it's been, Han's been in this rejuvenation thing, and Mr. Nobody's not going to tell them unless Han actually comes back to life. Otherwise, that would be a dick.
Or just have Han assisting him, training the little girl, having Han assist him in certain things, because I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Because of Fast X, we now understand more of Mr. Nobody in a sense of how some of the things happen. And we'll get to that here in the spoiler section. But you could have just had Han assisting Mr. Nobody, be like his behind the shadows kind of person, and have him on that plane. And then when the plane crashes, like have him knocked out. And then, I'm going to pull back. I don't think they should wake him up and be like, "Hi, you're still alive." But, as they're saying it, he's been dead. If this is 8 years after Tokyo Drift, or let's say 5 years, that means Han's been chilling for 5 years and not telling anybody. I mean, if that's 5 years, holy cow. Look at Lucas Black from Tokyo Drift, which let's say 8 years ago to Fast 9. Oh boy.
I think between Fate and F9 and Fast X, I would say there's probably a 5 year gap based on the age of the kid between, at least. So Han's been dead or playing dead for probably 5 years. If he didn't tell any of the family member, that's a dick move. So if we said 6 months or something, and he just saved L, if we want to introduce L in this rewritten film, that's kind of fine. But like, I got this letter like 6 months ago, this postcard. I don't know. Maybe they don't need the postcard. But
you don't need the postcard. I mean, the postcard was literally just to get Mia and Michelle Rodriguez alone, Letty alone, so they could have some screen time and a conversation between the two major characters of this movie, or this franchise, for the first time in 9 movies. They could have a conversation with each other. That was the only reason for that. The only purpose for that in postcard.
All right, so now we're getting into the Fast X spoiler review. I'm going to put it here. We'll come back to the tier list for Fast X and put it there. And I meant to do this at the beginning, but I'm just going to flare it up a little bit like Dante. Just ridiculous, just sloppily. And which I'm using. This looks even worse with headphones. I did a Fast X video essay, which is linked below. And I use some of this because Dante... Okay, I'm taking this hat off. I mean, everything's ridiculous, but... I've seen Fast X 3 times. Brad has seen it 6 times.
6? I mean, and they had to kick me out of the theater because they were like, "Dude, you can't sit here." And I was like, "Yes, I can."
Yeah. So. And Brad's forcing me to watch it a 4th time. So together we watched it 10 times. That's a lie. He didn't watch it 6 times. I have watched it 3 times, but how many times?
I've just seen it the once.
Because you're sane.
Yeah.
But what'd you think? What'd you think of Fast X?
It never stops. From opening sequence to fade to black before a mid-credit scene, I'm pretty sure that at no point in time does the action stop. I'm pretty sure they were like, "All right, we just saw John Wick 4, or we saw a pre-copy of John Wick 4. Let's do that,
but with cars. And they're like nonstop action, no, almost little to no story, as little stories we can possibly get away with and still consider this a movie. And then we'll just stop it right at the end and just go, yeah, you can get the more later. You can get the more in 3 more years when we decide to release 11. So that's kind of like the gist of this movie for me. I understand they did a lot of things well, and I think they did some things that could have been done well that need to be toned back, and they did some things that I wasn't 100% okay with. Some of the things they did really well, the action sequences, I think are done really well. I think they make each action sequence feel like it is substantial. It needed to be there. It felt like there were stakes to all the action sequences. I don't think there's any action sequence that wasn't. Some of the things that they could have toned down with is the eccentricness of Jason Momoa's character. I think that they tried to go like a Joker route. Like they were like, all right, well, how can we make this guy the worst villain of everything out of the entire franchise?
How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you want to tone down Jason Momoa?
I think they should have let Jason Momoa be Jason Momoa and let him kind of have that little bit of eccentric flair, happy, kind of go lucky, still strong, strong-willed, strong-minded. But they were almost like, all right, well, here's the Joker. We want you to kind of be like the Joker. We want you to kind of like be eccentric in that side and eccentric in life as well. And they kind of explained that through like he was in insane asylums and stuff like that. So he was in and out of that, and every time his dad bailed him out. So they have a backstory for it, but they could have toned it down a little bit. I know that some of the people I saw it with didn't really like the scene where he's painting the dude's toenails as they're dead and taped their eyes taped open, kind of like a Weekend at Bernie's type of thing. I understand it, but again, it could have been toned down a little bit. I just think it was a little over the top. And some of the things that didn't work well during some of the action sequences, like the ridiculousness of Dom jumping a car like 3 times and the car being 100% drivable at the end of it. There's one scene where he jumps off, hits the crane. The crane spins. It pushes him into a cliff. He lands off the cliff and drives away. And like little to no damage is done with his car. Like the front end's still in one piece. The side that he crashed in the mountain's a little dented. Not a big deal. 4 tires, the tire rods and everything. He just drives away like it's not a big deal. I understand that this is a Fast and Furious movie. I understand we've had Tarzan with a car, but holy cow, like some of these action sequences just go a little over the top. I want to applaud Alan Richardson.
The Reacher guy, right?
Yep, Reacher. I think he does a super good job in this movie. I love his character. I love the twist at the end of it. I loved just everything about that character seemed like spot on for me. I think if he was the actual true bad guy and he was just pulling around Jason Momoa because he knows he can manipulate him, if they do that in the next movie, I'd be pretty happy about that. But I really like how strong he seems like a really good opposite to Dom. He seems like does not care about things. Still very strong, very physically strong, very mentally strong, very manipulative. He seems like kind of Dom's opposite in this movie, and I think if he comes out to be the ultimate bad guy, I'd be pretty happy with that.
All right, well, firm agree to disagree on Jason Momoa's Dante. Yeah, for me, he was the best villain of all of them from like minute 5, mainly because he was so entertaining. Like that's what I want out of villains at this point, I guess, is to just be entertaining. Fun story about that toenail painting scene. Apparently, Louis Leterrier directed that scene and filmed it as like this would be funny on the Blu-ray if we did that, and then they put it in a test screening, and Universal was like, please leave it in the movie, which is freaking wild to me. I got that from the Real Blend podcast. And then I mean, even I thought you were talking about the final sequence where like Dom jumps his car out of the plane and smashes 2 cars.
And then just backs up. It's like, full speed ahead.
But there was also one more thing. What I don't know how I feel about the Reacher reveal, because ultimately you could argue that it's plot holes. I think there's arguments to to close those holes. Like, why does Jason Momoa's Dante need to take Cypher's force when he could just use Reacher Guy to use the agency? Although at that point, it's like better to have two armies and eliminate Cypher as a possible threat. During that, why bring him to the Fast Five bridge and have Reacher Guy bring him to the final sequence? Well, fuck with him more. Suffering is still owed. Don't kill him yet. I think it's setting up a very cool part 2 and possibly part 3 if the Rome premiere tease is real, because Vin Diesel said X might be a 3-parter. And then I also want to point out that Justin Lin left the franchise after 6 and didn't come back for 7.
No, stupid internet.
Awkward.
There we go. Okay.
Ah!
I don't know if that was me that crashed, you that crashed. I don't know.
And after doing F9, Justin Lin was developing Fast X Part 1 and 2. So he developed the first like 2/3 of the film because Michelle Rodriguez said Louis Leterrier came in when they didn't have a third act. So that means to me that Justin Lin had ideas for a family member who would try to exact revenge on the Fast family. Like, he had ideas for Deckard Shaw and he didn't get to use them, or he saw Furious 7 do the "I'm Deckard, hey, slow down so I can shoot at you." It was like, let's try to be a little more original with that. And I just loved it. The Rome sequence, one, going after Cypher, that was a cool way to make him like a boogeyman. And the retcon opening of Fast 5, great. But then his first real hit against the family was setting them up for failure by doing this fake heist sequence for the agency. And with the twist, even that, it's like, oh, cool. So the new guy helped Dante fake an agency recruitment, presumably. And then the other half of the family has to come save them. And then, oh, it's a bomb. Now we have to save the Vatican. And I was just loving this whole villain tear through the family. And then later they have the street chase where he's going to kill one or both family members, and Dom is put into an impossible situation. That was great. I just dug this. I don't like what they did with Jacob, though. A few things. One, if they're going to make him do the fun-loving Uncle John Cena, and on a rewatch, I think it worked a little better, you got to ease into that. If it were me, have him ease into that role in this film, and then have him go full goofy uncle in the next Fast X, which ties into my only real criticism of this film, which is why, if they stick with this, it's going to be a horrible decision. Because why would you have Jacob be introduced for less than 15 minutes of that actor in the last film, and then have him sacrifice himself in the next film? That seems like such a wasted character, especially with all the heavy lifting they had to do to justify his introduction in the last film. It's just like, that's so... And plus, I thought he was going to use his last rockets to just shoot them, which he could have. He could have just shot them from the other side of the highway and been like, okay, Dom, good luck. Like, that would have worked fine. But if they actually stick with this, I sacrificed myself in this moment, I'll be fine I'll be happy that not everyone who's teased to die comes back, because the whole plane with Roman and Tej and Ramsey, they didn't die. They had enough time. They got out somehow. We'll see that in Fast X. So if everybody comes back who's supposed to have died in that final sequence, it's a little lame, but I'd rather have that than have John Cena Jacob die in one of the weirdest, way too soon sequences. Like, the reason that chase scene worked for that character dying who showed up in Fast 5 is because we've had 5 movies to know that he exists. Yes, he hasn't popped back up, but he's like, I remember him from a decade ago. This one is like, I remember him from the last one that was kind of sloppy, and it's like, oh, we got a new brother, woo, and now he's gone.
The only way that this would work, and not necessarily work, I'm going to use work in air quotes, is if they couldn't get John Cena for either, they could only have John Cena for a certain amount of times filming, or they absolutely knew 100% that he was unavailable while they filmed 11 part 2, whatever you want to call the next movie. So they had to get rid of him this time when not have him next time. It also
which didn't happen because the original plan was to film Fast X Part 1 and 2 at the same time. Justin Lin left. Louis Leterrier came in. They didn't have a third act, so presumably the John Cena sacrifice wasn't planned. And even if it was, they have now come out and said that Fast X Part 2 is delayed because of the writer's strike. So they don't have a script for Fast X Part 2 right now, so they can film. So ultimately, if you're releasing the film and you haven't written the next film yet, no one really knows what the schedule is. And John Cena, relentlessly to me, has seemed like the most humble guy. It's like, I'm here to put my hours in. I'm here to do my job, whatever you need, whenever you need it. So, like, he's not Dave Bautista in Drax makeup being like, I don't want to do this anymore. 8 hours every day. Let me go. He's just John Cena being John Cena. If they wanted him back, he'd be like, we'll figure out a way.
Yeah, but at the end of this, and we know, I'm going to use no in quotation marks again, that these are the last 3 movies. So we've got to start kind of rounding out some of these characters because not everybody at the end of the story is going to make it. This is not, I don't think they have a grand plan of making this turn into a fairy tale where everybody makes out alive and everybody runs off into the sunset happy together. So I do think they need to start killing off some characters. I do think they need to have some meaningful deaths and some unmeaningful deaths along the way too, of sacrificing yourself but does nothing kind of things. So I do think maybe might be the first casualty of everything. Obviously, I don't think I don't think they killed off Ludacris, Tyrese, Ramsey, all the rest of the group in that plane.
Natalie
because I think there you go.
Well, she's a talented actress. I liked what they did with her hair in this movie. It was great. I thought she brought a lot to this movie, despite being one of the newest family members. And I like the fake love triangle between her, Roman, and Tej. I think it's funny, and I think everybody knows it's not going anywhere, but it's just funny to kind of bring up, and it's funny for those two to compete for her, even though she wants nothing really to do with either one of them. That she likes them for their own reasons, but not as like more of a brother, not like a boyfriend or future companion.
I actually thought they officially put that to bed, or showed that it was put to bed. Because what is it? I'll probably have to rewatch F9 because I can't remember. I know that in Fate, they were at the end be like, all right, so which one do you choose? All right, Tell me my last name. It's going to be Miss Parker. Hey, Miss Parker. Like, that was funny. But, like, I don't remember anything from F9. And when during the Rome sequence, she jokes, I know stuff now. And Ludacris says, marry me. And she goes, that's all it took? I took that because on paper, it seems like Ramsey's the one who actually wants to marry Tej, since she says, that's all it took for me to get your hand in marriage. It communicated to me that they're just friends and they're like, yeah, no, we'll never date. That's something to wink at in the past.
But they still compete for her attention, even kind of throughout this movie a little bit. They still compete for her attention. So
Can you remind me? Because I don't remember.
The scene where they're waiting outside of while they go pick up Shaw.
Yeah.
Deckard Shaw. They kind of have a little compete. And then when Ludacris and Tyrese fight inside that like mobile cafe that and she's like, just let it happen. It kind of feels like they're still kind of fighting for her attention a little bit. I think they know. I think she knows that it's not a thing. But I like how like the fan servicey aspect of everything. If they're still kind of competing for attention, that's just one of those little fan servicey things. And I think this movie does a good and bad job of filling some of those fan fictiony things that they kind of fan servicey, fan fictiony things that kind of get shoved in here.
Which, since you mentioned it, Shaw was my other complaint. Not that he had too short of a scene, because I'm sure it's going to all work out with this final 2 or 3-parter. But with Hobbs and Shaw, and even Fate of the Furious, where he gets redeemed, I think they did a 2 steps back right here. Because him defending himself at first okay, whatever. You think that he's gonna come kill you. You should be a little more apologetic, a little more like, kind of like the bride in the first Kill Bill when she kills the mother. It's like, just so you know, your mom deserved it, but I will be for you. Like that was apologetic, but showed respect for, she's gonna get her comeuppance eventually because this is a endless cycle of violence. This one was more like, oh, you fucked up coming back, me being killing you. How dare you come back? But like, all right, pump the brakes. If we had changed it to like, you messed up my snack, and then they fight a little more, he's like, I don't want to fight you. And then he paused and was like, then what do you do? And then like the agency people start coming in, that would have worked perfectly for me. But they went on for like 30 more seconds or 20. It was kind of like John Wick Chapter 4 in the Arc de Triomphe, where John Wick's just riding around the arc for like 15 seconds. It's like, no, you could have gotten out of there by now. You have no reason to be stuck there anymore, bud. It's just like, gotta edit that down a little bit. With this scenario, it's like, Shaw, you're not a fucking idiot. You're not that stupid that you'd keep fighting. He said he doesn't want to fight you after saying, you ruined my snacks. It's not whatever the sthenario is you're imagining.
Didn't they pause too? Because again, they're connecting this to, was it 8 or 9, whichever one, where he's at the end of the movie, he's punching the bag and there's a person in there. So they connected back to that.
F9 had, which in none of the reviews, no one mentioned that this is the guy from Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which I was laughing too hard at him running away in his underwear, and then like they watch him run away. Yeah,
like he like doesn't he like hit a door or something like that, can't get out, has to go somewhere else, and you can see him on the street running down the street. It's just like, oh. I didn't even look at the guy. I was too busy laughing at watching him try and run away.
For anyone who saw Ghost Protocol, that was the guy at the beginning where he's like, Sergey? In the prison. He's like, Sergey, are you not Sergey? and they get him with Paula Patton and Benji. And he's like, I always take care of my friends. My friends. It's that guy. So I just love when these big action franchises just like pluck a minor character and put it in for something. Kind of like how Hobbs and Shaw did, but not just to kiss him. But yeah, there's not much I'd complain about this. I just think
it. My big complaints were they did a good job, but also a bad job at shoving in so much fan service into this movie. And then I would, in my personal opinion, dial Jason Momoa's character back, the eccentricness back just a little bit closer to normal. Have his like really eccentric moments and show that, mentally he's not stable, like a Joker-esque character for Batman, and have him have those moments of like, oh yeah, did you see that? Oh yeah, that's great. And then have him also be the mastermind of like, yeah, I've already planned this. I was waiting for you. Oh, you didn't think he was already on my team? He's been on my team since day one. But then also have his like crazy, like kind of wacky moments of him like cheering on that, he just blew up one of the 2 cars, and it's like, ah ha ha, just kidding, I'm just gonna blow up both of them anyway. But just to dial it back just a little bit through some of those scenes is just a little over the top for me.
I get that. I do like how so when I first saw it, I didn't think about Joker once, and even though like everybody else was smarter than me and said, yeah, this is Joker, but I think it's because he dialed, maybe not his character like you're saying, but he dialed the Joker back a little bit, because the Joker in Rome would not be bantering or being funny. Like, I will be saying the quote, all right, what next? Or, okay, what are we blowing up? What? The Vatican? Okay, I'll do it, but you guys are going to hell. Like, that's even better. The full quote is even better than in the trailers, which I didn't see that part in the trailers. So I was very glad for that to be not spoiled for me. But it's just, with those scenes, I'm just like, this is just a joy. He's having fun. I'm having fun. I absolutely love that Jason Momoa did not have to be on a diet for this. Something about 20-foot Jason Momoa, the only human being taller than Brad on this planet Earth.
And with better hair too. Just saying, better hair.
We'll have to get you both in a room. That's like the fact that he could eat like a dozen donuts every morning somehow fills me with joy. Like clearly underneath his he's wearing my stomach as a fashion accessory, but underneath he's clearly got like Brad's muscly just like he could actually fight Vin Diesel in a ring. Yeah. But he gets to have donuts every morning. Something about that just I love it.
he looked, the character and Jason Momoa looked like they were having fun filming this.
Yeah.
It looked like it was one of those things like he's, in my mind, he's always wanted to be on these things. He always wanted to be on this movie. And he said, yeah, just kind of do your thing and, kind of make it up. And he's like, all right, well, I'm going to have fun with this. And we're going to do this and we're going to be kind of silly. And just kind of feels like it's a thing that like he made a mental choice of just doing instead of being like, all right, well, I am now Aquaman and I have to be rigid and I can't make anything more than like a quick pun.
Man.
He's like, I can now finally be me, because he just seems like one of those like always smiling kind of guys and always like joking around, and he's like one of those guys you just want to be around because his energy, you just feed off his energy and his positiveness, and it makes you positive. So I think they let him kind of do that, and a lot of it feels genuine. But
also, if the rumors that he's going to be recast as Lobo in the DCU, which were like day one rumors, as soon as James Gunn was announced, like we've seen so many rumors that haven't come true. So I'm never actually going to believe it until I see it. But if he ends up being Lobo, from what I know of Lobo, this is like an audition tape. Like, yeah, just be crazy, have muscles, be crazy, make us entertained.
So kind of to piece how we can bring back certain characters, because at the end of this movie we get teased with The Rock, we get teased with Gal Gadot, so we could, I'm going to knock on wood, bring back somebody like Jesse, because I think he's the last like remaining person that we have not brought back in this franchise.
Not brought back to life, but a lot of people have recently been reminding me that there was that other guy in the heist in the Fast and the Furious who didn't die. I forget his name.
Yes.
But yep. A lot of people will be like, guys, he's not even dead. Like, just let him come back.
But so I was kind of teasing this when we were doing the 2 rating for F9 as kind of how an explanation of how we can get some of these characters back was the technology that Mr. Nobody and the agency has. They were able to stab Letty and have her sewn up, healed back within seconds. So we do have a semi understanding that they could do stuff like this, and I'm going to imagine that's how they got Giselle back, was that they were able to not capture, that sounds bad, they were able to grab her after she fell, hit the ground, and they were able to bring her back to life through technology. Maybe she'll be like Anakin Skywalker and be half robot at this point. I have no idea.
Which, by the way, we forgot to talk about Brie Larson. I think she did a good job, but the writing in her scenes sometimes is some of the worst writing in the film, or nonsense. Let me say why. So when she goes to talk to Dom, there are 2 people in the bar who are like, "You're looking for somebody, you're gonna die," and then the bartender, who, as far as we know, has never seen her for a day in his dang life, throws her a shotgun after she punches one of them, and then she shoots the ceiling and then gives the shotgun back, and the bartender's just chill, and then the only bald guy in the whole place is finally seen by Brie Larson, and she takes 2 bells. I'm like, wait, okay, we want to see that she's a badass. Why'd you do it like this? Why?
Well,
he wants to meet her. Why would he have the locals terrify her? Why is the guy giving her it just seems so sloppy.
I think she beats up 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
and then gets thrown the shotgun. And the shotgun is kind of like what basically ends everything. I think she kicks her, punches one person after that. But I think the shotgun is kind of what pauses everybody.
Yeah,
But
she comes in, offers to buy everybody shots until they're happy endlessly. Two guys are like, because she's looking for somebody, Dom. And then the two guys are like, you looking for somebody, you're going to die. She kicks their butts. Bartender throws her the shotgun. She ruins the ceiling. And he's joyed. He is so happy for her to shoot his ceiling. She gives back the shotgun. He's like, here's your Belgiums. And they are having their ass kicked. And there's Dom. And I'm just like, when Dom goes to Helen Mirren and Fate, that makes sense. Like, why they're grumpy. Like, I don't want you here. But Dom wants her there.
yeah,
And none of it, I don't know anything. And then when she goes to Letty, she clearly stabs her first. And then gets taken hostage, which at that point you're like, wait, let's look at the camera. When did Letty get stabbed?
and they show it in the camera because Brie Larson stabs Letty first, and then, or she says, just go with it, stabs her first, and then like grabs her arm, puts it around so that way she's still holding that thing against her throat to make it look like she was being captured. But yeah,
I mean, yeah.
Although the fight between those two, when they were like, how much time do we have? Oh, we got about 4 minutes till the cameras kick back on. Great, won't need it. And then they start fighting. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was a fun sequence that had way too much editing, only because I think this is why Michelle Rodriguez confirmed that at that point when they were filming, they didn't have a director. So they used the second unit director, I guess. But on a rewatch, it's like way too over edited, and you're like, this is.
And not only that, like timeline, I don't want to say necessary timeline, but like the amount of time that it takes, it was way too long. So for her to have that fight sequence, climb all the way back up that tunnel, then she has to climb back down because obviously it was.
She's not jumping 100 feet.
She's not falling there. Climb all the way back down, and then Brie Larson's already got her snowsuit on. I was like, oh, well, did you realize that it's cold outside?
Yeah, not 4 minutes.
Yeah, that was no way that's 4 minutes, because I think that's where we leave them, I think, is at that point that they've both got snowsuits and they are eventually going to have to leave Antarctica. But I don't think we saw them actually leave Antarctica at this point yet.
Yeah, just, I don't know, say half an hour. It's still too tight of a window.
A half hour, I think, would be, I mean, it was going to take some time to climb up and realize you get to the top, figure out what you're going to do, and then climb back down. I think a half hour would be moving.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense, but in the last film, Dom took down a building by pulling two chains, and somehow Letty broke through that door even though it was locked to save him. So being like, okay, like let it be somebody's cool YouTube video of showing Letty just super speeding up that thing somehow in under 10 minutes. But
yeah, like with like Benny Hill music as she climbs up and comes back down, and then like in reverse climbing back down. What do you think of Elena having a sister? It makes sense. I wasn't against it. I think it's on some level. Again, they're trying to shove as much fan service into this as possible, so they had to bring her back. Obviously, she's the mother of Dom's child, so they had to bring her back into this movie somehow. I didn't hate it. It makes sense. I don't know. I just felt like it was kind of rushed. I felt like it was unnecessary. They could have found a way to bring Elena back into this movie without, him going to Brazil and doing a little sequence down there with her, and then her being like, "Oh, I don't want to come back with you guys. I need to be here." But to have that emotional moment of, no, she was the good sister, I'm the bad sister. We probably didn't need it in this movie.
Yeah, probably unnecessary, but they made it mean something.
Yeah.
Be meaningful. And I mean, if anyone would argue that Elena was fridged, which traditionally, like a female character being fridged is in the first 5 minutes of a film and it motivates the whole film. So it technically not, but by bringing her back, it just continues that era of we respect what came before and everyone who contributed a verse. That was the hustle and flow thing.
That whole
years ago.
That whole middle section of the movie, from finding like after the Rome sequence to when we finally start getting towards like the street racing and stuff like that, it feels like they did a world tour of like, all right, we need to kind of get everybody back into this movie. We need to pay respect to the people that aren't here anymore, but we need to make like certain stops. And it kind of felt like a world tour. They need to see Elena. They need to go back to get Deckard Shaw. Feel like I'm missing one or two other ones. They stopped and didn't they see what's her name? The Deckard Shaw's mom stopped and saw. Didn't he?
She came in right after Rome before Dom left, and then for the rest of the film, Dom's basically in Rio for the entire time. Jacob. Jacob was going with little Brian around the world, and then we got.
And they had to go back to the. They had to go back to the place from 9, the vault or whatever, the area that they all met at 9, because that's when they decided, oh shit, we need to get out of here.
9 was
when the vault when like where Han came back into the movie, or when they brought Han back, that like submerged or like and they had all the fighting and stuff like that in 9. They had the locking door sequence where Dom locks the door on them and then turns around and fights everybody on the bridge. On that like catwalk area.
Yeah, I don't know where that hideout was. This one in Rio de Janeiro, where Jacob goes, he said it was an old mine that he used to hang out. So
it's not the same as
it might be. If it is, it's just definitely another room because they don't have any of the magnets or computer stuff or things. But wait. So, all right. So let me get this straight. Dom goes to Rio de Janeiro. Letty goes to the Antarctic. Roman and the others go to London, and then Jacob just goes around the world with Lil B. And does Mia come back in the film after they try kidnapping Lil B? No, right?
I don't think so. She might be in the plane or something, but
for me, this movie gave like a full meal that satisfied me, but also somehow feels like a firm part 1 because there's so many things. I mean, even Deckard Shaw shows up for the one scene. Like
the only things that they really missed were, stopping and seeing. For me in my head, I'm thinking here, Jesse, the one guy, and they didn't stop at the grave for the guy, the red guy, and I'm drawing a blank on what his name was that came back in Fast 5 down there in Brazil. He was the one in the red car. He had the I think it was like a red sleeveless shirt on. Fought Brian against the truck in the first movie.
Vince.
There you go.
Okay.
So those are like the only 3 people off the top of my head that I can think of that they like didn't stop or mention in this movie.
Yeah, where's Nico?
Yeah,
Vince's son.
But overall, it felt fine. Like I said, I'd make a few tweaks, but overall, it felt fine. I'm excited for the next one. At the same time, I'm like, please don't be as over the top in the next one. I wanted it a little bit more grounded, little less like cartoony, where you smash a car, you jump a car into a crane, into the side of a cliff, and then drive away, or drop a car out of a plane with absolutely no parachute, and that everything's good. We just land in a car, back out, and keep going forward. So a little bit like dial it back just a little bit. I do want the unrealistic things because otherwise this movie would be kind of lame. So, but I wish I would tweak that back just a little bit. At least give them a parachute, a slight parachute, something.
Sure. Fun fact: the bomb in the Rome sequence was done for real, like
an actual bomb exploded, and it was a set for. Because I've never been to Rome, but I'm fairly convinced that Rome is entirely not downhill, because that bomb like never stopped rolling downhill ever. It got stuck on a rail and then it got bumped and it kept rolling downhill. So unless the Vatican is at the base of a giant mountain, I don't know. I
think the Vatican's at the top of a mountain, technically.
Well, then that bomb's not going to make it.
Everything except the steps sequence was done in Rome, apparently. Like the step sequence they had to recreate because if they broke it, they'd be in a lot of trouble. And apparently while they were filming, some guy like rented a charger or something and went down the steps and broke it himself, but not the production. But no, they had like cables and stuff and a charger, and that's essentially all they had. They had it like roll, and then the charger was doing what it was doing, helping it slow for the sequences, apparently. Like that was real.
That's crazy because that thing was like rolling downhill like the entire sequence.
And they actually lit the ball on fire. The fire wasn't CGI even. It was I didn't believe it. That was from the Real Blend podcast as well, interviewing the director.
There's no way, and this is in the trailers too, there's no way when Dom like clips that awning to bring the awning down, there's no way that awning stopping those flames.
Yeah, it doesn't help completely. Like, it's not like Fate of the Furious where cars can actually stop fire like they're a wizard. But these are the rules that we're playing with. So verisimilitude.
Yeah, I really liked Alan Richardson, the guy from Reacher. Fantastic.
Only because it's been there for so long. Do you want me to correct your name?
Oh, I don't care. I've noticed it a long time ago. It didn't bother me.
Okay. But yeah, anything else you want to talk about before we go back to the tier list?
No, I'm good. I would go see it if you haven't seen it. I'll probably end up picking up this movie probably day one, more than likely. I do want to rewatch it, but yeah, solid movie, solid entry.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this. I fucking hate Umberto, who worked for the Wrap, who spoiled Dwayne Johnson's return for everybody.
I didn't see it. I mean, I expected it, especially when they brought back the credit scene of like the room that what's his name set up, Jason Momoa set up and had everybody's thing. So I kind of expected it was The Rock. The one I didn't see happening was Gal Gadot. I did not kind of expect that. I thought she was pretty firmly dead, but at the same time, in the back of my mind, nobody in this franchise is actually dead. So
yeah, apparently those two ideas were Louis Leterrier's because he's a fan of the Fast franchise, and he said that with The Rock specifically, it took some convincing, but he reached out months ago, and the thing that finally got him to say yes was he invited him to see the movie. So people joked, and I thought the same thing, that this was probably filmed a week ago. Before the movie came out, and it probably was because the film was finished. But no,
my joke on that was his DC movie flopped. He hasn't made a good movie in how long now at this point? Like, this is the last thing he's got. Like, he's clinging on for some good publicity and some good movie to push him back into other roles. I think Jungle Cruise is probably his last good role in my mind, off the top of my head.
Oh God. You are so kind, because that movie is a piece of shit.
Yeah, because it's not Red Notice. It's not the DC movie that I can't even think of the name of off the top of my head, even though we reviewed it. Black Adam. I can't think of it. Like, Jungle Cruise is probably the last good movie.
Don't rewatch it then.
Okay, I'll just say in my ignorance, my blissful ignorance.
But no, if I had actually had the time and planned it, I would have already released my Dwayne Johnson earned his Black Adam's failure video, and I would have predicted that. I mean, that's why he's doing the live action Moana, because it's easy. It's gonna make money.
I guess Moana's not bad, but he's not the main character.
I mean, Moana's gonna be a piece of shit. The live action, because if you go back to Moana, Maui gets beat up a lot.
Yeah.
Dwayne Johnson's not going to do that for his live action, so he's already ruining certain parts of the film. And everyone that I've seen talk online about it hates the idea because it's not even, we haven't had 80 years with it, or 40 years, or 70, or whatever. It's just way too soon. Yeah, that was definitely motivated by Black Adam's failure. He's like, I had an actual bomb.
Yeah, I need to get back in the spotlight, and I need a positive role to put me back into where I want to be, because he was fighting for some other DC characters that he wanted to, and I think he kind of got the door shut on his hand on that one.
Yeah, and now coming back here, yes, I'm sure it helped that the movie was good, but I also would not be surprised if he was just playing hard to get after the movie bombed. Because Black Adam came out, must have been like 4 months ago.
October 21st, 2022, because I'm looking at his Wikipedia.
Yeah, so I think Dwayne Johnson is in his damage control phase, where he's like, okay. Oh, by the way, now I'll say it when we do the tier list for Fast X, but the final era that I have a corny name for. But Yeah. What is it? This is how it happened. So there were screenings where people talked about it before the Rome premiere. Then the Rome premiere happened. Then the rap with Umberto, I forget his name, but they had the exclusive and they put it in the headline, and everyone else put it in the headline that The Rock was returning for Fast X with a week left before the film. So everybody online who saw that, who talked about it on YouTube, agreed. This was not an exclusive. This was not a scoop. This was just a even if other people hadn't seen it at the premiere and could have told Humberto Gonzalez, I don't know his last name, I don't want to say for sure. With it being less than a week that the movies came out, this was a spoiler. So it was just dirty. They could have done a headline of the most shocking character returns in, or spoiler text, spoiler returns in Fast X, something.
I buried my head pretty well. I had seen like one trailer for this movie. I buried my head pretty well and kind of avoided a lot of things. So I didn't see that spoiler. But I had a feeling that eventually, because I know that his career wasn't doing so well, that this was the last thing. And I figured he would, in private, kind of put his tail between his legs, go back to Vin and say, yeah, let's do this. Everybody wants me back. Let's go ahead and make this happen. We'll squash our beef later, but I'll come back for this movie for you. So that's kind of how I assumed it went. And then, once I saw it, the actual movie, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah, I just to mislead my friend Richard, who I saw it with my daughter and Richard. When the Fast 5 sequence was happening in the beginning, I laughed when Dwayne Johnson was supposed to come on if the flashback showed his face. I was like, I thought they were going to force Dwayne Johnson to be in a Fast and Furious movie again, just to like make that mid-credit scene a little more surprising. But that would have been such a good moment, after 2 hours and never thinking he'd come back and having that mid-credit scene and just like, what? It would have been so beautiful, and the rap had to fuck it up.
Yeah. Well, it didn't fuck up for me, and like I said, I kind of knew it was coming at the same time, but kind of didn't. I mean, it was a surprise for me, but not a surprise. It's like a birthday present that you're like, oh, I've been asking for this, thing for quite a while now. Will I get it? Will I not get it? Oh, I got it because I've been asking for it for so long. Thanks, Mom. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'll have to wait till Tyrese talks about it because I can't trust Dwayne Johnson to tell us how it really was on set. And I'm sure Vin will say something. And I'm sure Vin will say something that kind of toes the line between being passive aggressive and PR. Like, well, my little brother Dwayne came on and we had a great old time. It's like, all right. But if Tyrese comes out as like, yeah, we actually had a barbecue. It was fine. We squashed our beef. I'd be like, all right, I'll trust whatever comes out of Tyrese's mouth, just like I would trust Dave Bautista, since when James Gunn got fired, Dave Bautista was like, I will literally stare down Disney if they don't use that fucking script. They can fucking sue me. And Tyrese is like, why is Dwayne Johnson such a bitch? Something about that just makes me trust him later. But all right.
So before we do the tier, I got one question, or two questions. Do you think this is going to be a 2-part or 3-part? And then my second question is, do you think that this will be the end of these characters and that the Fast franchise will continue with something else with different characters? Do you think that it'll continue on with spin-offs of characters? Or do you think that'll be the end of the franchise and it'll sit dormant for 10 plus years?
I want it to be 3. I don't know if it will be 3.
Something big's got to happen if it's going to make it into a third movie.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to add more. However, with the writer's strike, that's just giving Vin Diesel more time to think about it, since he is a producer. And I kind of want, one thing I'm going to call is we're going to have Brian back on screen somewhere. So
they've already kind of made that a thing. I mean, that is one thing I didn't get not spoiled to me, I guess. He's not in this movie outside of the beginning scenes, but they've already got Cody agreeing to do the motion capture and stuff. And I would imagine they've already filmed some scenes for this movie and that they got cut out because I saw Cody in a motion suit or whatever, the white dots and stuff. There's a photo of that.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'd imagine that they cut out some of the stuff for this movie, and that's going to be the big reveal in the next movie. That might be the end of the next movie of like Brian's back, and then Brian and Vin rule the world in 13 or 12 or whatever it is.
I didn't know that about Cody and that. I mean, Vin Diesel put it into all of our heads after Furious 7. Like, he was the first one that I remember mentioning possibly bringing him back again for when the franchise is about to end. So if we can get Brian in 2 of them, that would be amazing. I don't see that happening. Just because
they would have to stretch out a bad guy for quite a while, and I don't think it can be Momoa unless Momoa is the bad guy. We finish Momoa in the next movie, and then Alan Reacher, I'm just going to call him Reacher because I don't remember what his actual last name is, stretches it to the third movie where he's the ultimate bad guy.
I mean, that'll be a challenge all in itself. But
yeah,
in terms of bringing Brian back, I would like 2 full movies, but I don't see that happening out of just a healthy fear of overusing this, what could be argued as a cash grab. Like, if Tupac being a hologram at a concert is controversial, everyone's got to be scared of bringing Brian back and not doing a good job.
I think they would bring him back at the end of, if they're going to do 3, they would bring him back at the end of the next one, and then he would be all of 12.
Yeah, so I would like 3, especially since I'm calling this era I'm going to bring the screen just for it. I'm calling the Fast X era the victory lap era. So I hope we get 3, just, them enjoying and really taking their time to have a final huge, massive story. Look, most of this film was developed by Justin Lin. So, and most of the parts that I love are in the part that was developed by Justin Lin. So I don't know if Louis will make these last 2 the greatest films in the whole franchise. But to answer your question, I think Vin Diesel is going to retire after these, but he will keep producing. I mean, he's already said that he developed a all-female spin-off script. He developed that game that everybody hates. He developed that TV show that I liked and kids probably like, but is very not talked about in the franchise. And then I think down the line, he'll eventually come back just because he misses it and wants to. But I really want that female spinoff. I want it. And I also want to make my Atlantic Drift. And then, Dwayne Johnson has talked about 7 Bucks Production has been kicking around ideas for a Hobbs and Shaw 2. So I would not be surprised if that happens because Dwayne Johnson wants easy wins. If Hobbs and Shaw can make $800 million, I think if he could make another Hobbs and Shaw and somehow get the release date in between Fast X Part 2 and 3, that would make another $800 million. Even if we all hated Hobbs and Shaw 1, we'd be like, well, maybe because he came back, maybe it'll be fine.
Spoiler alert, it won't be.
If somehow Vin Diesel can help produce it, I think they'd have a better chance. But I don't know if that could happen.
My guess is that Vin Diesel, that this group of characters will be no more after the end of this saga of 2 or 3 movies. My guess is probably 3 because I think they'll figure out a way to stretch it for the extra money and to make sure that they get everybody a chance to, really say their goodbyes. I think there's going to be some heartfelt moments of we're going to lose people, and I think we're going to be like Infinity War to Endgame, where everybody's kind of beaten, and they need to figure out. And I think that's when Brian will come back, and Brian will have some trick up his sleeve. He'll drift in off the screen in the air and dive into the ocean. After these movies are done, I would imagine that they will do a few spin-offs, kind of like not Hobbs and Shaw like, but more individual. I think they might have more of a character-driven like prequel series, whether they do that at TV or a movie. But I don't think it'll be like a coordinated release. I think it'll just be like, we'll do this and we'll spend 2 years doing this, and then in the following year we'll release it. We'll take a little bit of a break. We'll write something. 5 years down the line we might release something. I think it'll be more of like passion projects kind of a system versus all right, this is a set goal. We're going to do 3 movies. We're going to do this, kind of like how Star Wars is. I think it's going to be more like passion project-y. And but I don't think after this movie we will see this group of character on screen again ever. I think we might get a few spin-offs of some of these characters, but that'll be about it. We might see like a Ramsey backstory. She's still pretty young. Stuff like that.
Some people have predicted that they're setting up a Young Avengers type of thing. Probably because Dom was talking to Han and saying, that's what it's all about, for the next generation to be better versions of ourselves, which I love. I actually love. I think some people need to remember that we're trying to make people better than us for the next generation. Also, I'm going to do one little prediction. The moment when Han was going up to Roman, and Roman says, don't talk to me. Like he's getting disrespected at the barbecue. I think I think that's going to be a false flag of Han was going to be like, hey, so I don't need the dating app because Giselle's still alive. Although I do want to say Mr. Nobody, when they're trying to find them in Rome, saying, or Little Nobody, when he's like, I even tried Han's dating app.
Yes, and still couldn't get a hold of him.
That was great. I love that. Okay, we've been going for, it's going to be edited, so it won't be at this point, but 2 hours and 25 minutes, which I don't know if I made my joke that we were so quick with the tier list at the beginning. Where would you put Fast X?
I'm probably still going to put it in the...
I'm just doing this because I have to scroll. Nobody get angry.
It's in the F tier. I would probably drop it right where it's at right now. Again, for me, it's probably slightly higher than 9, but probably not by much. And so 9, I put like a C plus, B minus. So I'm probably going to say B minus, C plus. So it's probably slightly higher than mine.
All right. So me, I would actually, and this is weird, especially because when we were talking about Dune Part 1, I was like, this just feels like a Part 1. And this does feel like a Part 1, but I said it still gave me a full meal, so it does feel a little more standalone-y, even though structurally that makes no sense, because almost everything is on a cliffhanger of what's the end of the story. But personally, having faith that 2 and a possible Part 3 would make one satisfying story, I would put it somewhere between Furious 7 and Fast 5. Because I think this did a great job of making it feel more grounded than like the F9 did and giving us a more unique situation. But I'd probably, you said B minus, C plus, right?
Yeah, I would, in my world, I would have it between The Fast and The Furious, and I like saying F9. That's my favorite. And F9 is probably, if you put that there and swapped Tokyo Drift in 1, that would probably be my rating in order.
All right, so I was feeling S minus, A plus, like somewhere in between there, but I don't want to like push it so much that this is getting into A tier since you're B minus, C plus. So I think averaging, I would put it.
I would probably put A, but it's going to be after 5, before Tokyo Drift. If you average it out, if you're like an S minus, I'm at like a B minus, then it'd be like an A minus.
Yeah, all right. I was gonna put it down here, but yeah, that feels balanced and nice. Once this is a full story, I think it has the potential to be the best. But Louis Leterrier, who's traditionally not a director I put a lot of faith in, like I enjoyed The Incredible Hulk, but it was fine. I think I saw the opening to Transporter 2 in like a doctor's office and it looked real bad.
Solid.
I didn't like it. But he did a really good job with this film. It'll just really depend on if he as a director brings something great to 2 and 3 or he just does the job. And by great, I don't mean bringing back Giselle, which is great, and Hobbs, which is also great. I mean like visually and creatively, because the end of the movie, the last act, while I really enjoyed it, was the least interesting part, relatively speaking. That sounds like an insult, but I'm trying, like, it was firing on 11 cylinders, which I don't know if is a thing because I don't know cars in the beginning. And by the end, it was firing on 8 or 9 cylinders. Like, still doing good, but we're not where we're at during the beginning. And this is my favorite villain of the whole thing. If
he's
if we
probably
got
still
four parts, I'd be like, please Dante be in all of them.
he's probably my favorite villain out of all the movies. I mean, he's probably right up there with
Owen Shaw,
no, not Owen Shaw, the lady from 8,
Cypher.
She's probably up there because I really liked Cypher, but he's probably better. He's probably the best villain for me.
Cypher for me had the most promise, and with Charlize Theron in the role,
Yes.
and was poorly executed, especially in F9. I mean,
I think it goes downhill. I wish it got resolved better, and then it kind of felt like they just kind of limped her into 9.
they did a good job with her here. I thought her scene with Dante was amazing. That whole sequence. But all right, cool. So we've got well, if we are truthful and just show how much of an egomaniac I am, we've ended up with my favorite in the top spot and my least favorite at the bottom spot. So my ego is satisfied.
There was only so we did 11 movies. Of those 11, I think there was only 5 or 6 that we didn't agree. Like, I think order wise, I think we are pretty close. 6 and 7, 1 and 2, 6, 7, 5, 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3. And then we disagreed a little bit in the middle, but the bottom we're agreeing on. So the only thing we're really missing is the middle. So
I'll add this for the end, but for Furious 7, and I'm not like this normally, but I just could. I bought out a theater for Furious 7 for me and my friends. We went to, we had this whole adventure for the night, and since I was coordinating it, I was like, I'm not going to drink. And because of that, in this theater, which was a great experience, I didn't get to cry at the end because I was sober. I think if I had 1 or 2 beers, I would have been just a ball of tears, but I didn't get to. People who were not caught up cried at the ending. That's how powerful that was. People who were not invested in this franchise. But fast forward to 2020, I'm watching it with my daughter. I'm drinking wine, and then I've come to the end. I'm just fucking bawling, and she doesn't know what happened. She doesn't know what Paul Walker. But she's like, "Why are you crying?" And this is like ugly crying. Like, I basically said he passed away and blah, blah, blah. But it was just years and years of that cry waiting to happen. And it finally got to come out. Also, I forgot to mention, Fast X made me cry. Can you guess which part? It wasn't Jacob dying. Shocker.
it was when The Rock came back and you're like, no.
Why did you ruin that for me? The rap, you professional assholes.
You know, I don't know. I don't think there's any scenes that I even got kind of emotional at.
No one would be able to guess it.
What Little B got taken. No,
it was when Tej, and I think it's just the fact that at most jobs and with like the relationship with my parents, I'm never validated when I do a good job. So when he said, you got us to London in a container, you paid for everything with money strapped on you, you saved us, and you're taking responsibility for this whole thing that's really our responsibility. That sounds like a leader. And I was like, it does sound like a leader. He did such a good job, and he got validated. He's always getting clowned on. I did cry, and I'm making my face red for dramatic, but I was also tearing up thinking about that. Like, that was just a really sweet moment to me. Like, they are brothers. That's what their fight hit me as. Like, them wrestling on the ground. I was like, oh, I've seen that with like brotherly kids. They just fucking
siblings,
fight because they're bickering all the time. And it just felt really good to have a change from Tej just constantly clowning on him, which is always funny. But when he comes out and actually supports him, whoo, that hit. I was like, oh, that's the benefit of we're 11 in. Like, how often do you get these levels of characters outside of a TV show in terms of continuity and history?
But even then, in TV shows, a lot of actors come and go, and a lot of characters come and go. So you might have a core group, 2 or 3 people that have been through most of the seasons. But I mean, we've been through with Tyrese, we've been through 9 movies. With Ludacris, we've been through 9 movies together. I mean, well, I guess technically it's not. It's 8 because it's not
8.
Tokyo Drift. So it's 2. It's 2 minus 1 and 2,
All right.
or 1 and 3. So Tyrese gets introduced in 2. He's
And
obviously
so
not
does Ludacris.
and so does Ludacris, but he's not in Tokyo Drift.
Is Ludacris in Fast and Furious?
Ooh, I don't think so,
No.
because I think it's the other 2 guys.
Yeah. They do come in Fast 5, Furious 6. So
7, 8,
1,
9.
2, 3, or wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
So they're in 7 full movies.
Yes, sir. Oh, man, this is man. Can you imagine? Who is it? Who was the guy that Ludacris replaced? Ja Rule.
Oh,
Can you imagine Ja Rule trying to clown on Tyrese Gibson?
it wouldn't.
Monica! Ja Rule would have ended up, I don't think with the paycheck that Ja Rule was trying to get for 2, he would have ever become the clown, quote unquote. That's not disrespect to Tyrese because that's the part he's playing. I don't think Ja Rule would have been able to put his ego aside enough to be the comedic relief clown.
Yeah, no, I'm glad he didn't, because I think Tyrese, just based on interviews, he seems like Roman is Tyrese. Tyrese is Roman. He shows up on set and just like, all right, what am I saying? Cool, this is what I'm saying. And he's just like, yeah, just do you, but say these words.
Yeah. And on the flip side, I never would believe Ja Rule trying to clown on Tyrese. I'd be like, excuse me, Monica. Like, I would just say that every time he'd try to insult Tyrese. I'd be like, oh, really, Monica? Everyone would yell at me in the theaters. Like, shut the fuck up.
We get it. We know who he is.
And then the whole theater would turn and actually defend me if one person was like, who the fuck is Monica? They'd be like, how dare you? This guy's the second biggest idiot in this theater. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I was just looking at Hobbs and Shaw and feeling disappointed again. What's your tier list? Yell at me for all my discretion or all my crimes. And if there's anything you want to yell at Brad about, just know that I'm holding his family hostage and his kitty cat. His kitty. I'm holding his kitty hostage.
And that was funny. That scene was funny too, because like he just kills the one guy. He's like, he actually doesn't have anything. He doesn't have a family, a cat, nothing.
He didn't have not even a kitty. Sad. And just licks the blade and like a fucking lollipop. Gosh, I want to see Dante be this year's Halloween costume. Like, that's what I'm gonna go for. I'm not gonna have the hair, but I'm gonna have the fingernail polish. I'm gonna ask people to hold up fake guns just so I can caress them. Offer everyone nail polish. Can I do your toenails? I've got some tape for your face. I honestly, I would be, if they could find a way that it's not exhausting, that it doesn't grow old, I would actually be down for a 4-parter, because in Rome, Michelle Rodriguez was like, there's a beginning, middle, and end to every story, and in my mind I was like, yes, but Act 2 is always twice as long, so let's do 4 parts. But I want Dante. I respectfully disagree. I want Dante to always be the main villain, so he's always being crazy in these all the way up until the last credits. But
yeah,
if this ended and we didn't get that female spinoff, I would be disappointed. Like, that script already exists. Let's see it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed. I definitely wouldn't be opposed to it. I just didn't. I don't know. I just think that at the end of this, we will not see these characters on screen together again as these characters. I don't think we may have some spin-offs of one-offs of like, maybe of Ludacris, of how he got to be, or maybe we have a spin-off of Giselle or something like that. But I don't think we won't see this group together.
Honestly, I'd be down if like Brie Larson becomes with her dad, because he's going to come back eventually. He's missing. If she became the new head of the agency or co-head with her dad, and then we just got missions. We got the all-female spinoff. That's a mission for the agency. We get Tej and Roman and Han and Giselle go on a mission. That's another mission. I'd be down. But if these movies don't bring back Elle and Jacob, like Jacob at least one more time in these victory lap movies, I think that's going to retroactively make F9 a worse movie. Like, so in the grand scheme of things, this movie introduced 2 more characters. One we never saw again if it's Elle, if she doesn't show back up, and another who was apparently the most important new character, and they died one movie later. It would just cheapen.
Yeah, I'm going to take a guess and a shot in the dark and say that he comes back. John Cena's character comes back just because I don't think he got the dramatic ending that we are going to need to make his character pay off. Just like anybody that dies, permanent deaths at the ends of these movies, if they don't get like a little bit to themselves of like a final goodbye type of things, kind of like what they do in like the Marvel movies and stuff like that, where they kind of get that last little hurrah and then die.
He did get that though. I mean, I agree that it didn't work, but like the first time I watched it, I thought he had his hand on the roof, which Elena's sister did when she flipped over in the race and she survived. So I was like, oh, if you're saying that he survived because he put it, that's going to be silly, but I'd rather have that. On my second watch, like he did the whole speech and everything, although I think he should have said, I fucked up. Like I let my nephew, your son, get kidnapped. I need to make it up or something. I don't know. But in this one, when he's flipping, he's holding the cross chain. And I was like, oh, he's holding the cross chain instead of the roof. Do they really think this is working? Oh no. So I think the only way that he comes back is if there's enough noise online, because if people didn't know, Letty's death in Fast and Furious was always meant to be permanent. Like that's what Justin Lin said. That was the plan. They planned on fridging Letty essentially, and then they changed their mind later. So I hope they didn't intend it to be permanent, and if they did, I hope they changed their mind. Because yeah, even if they make that death not actually happen, I don't think. What do you think? Do you think they could actually kill off Jacob in a part 2 or 3 and have it be real?
Yeah, I think they can. I think they can do it. We kind of see him just like shoot the rockets and kind of blow up a little bit. So I do think he can. I do think there's a possibility that he comes back, and then maybe instead of him dying at the end, he's one of the last survivors of the Toretto family, and he's the one that gets to raise little Brian. Because I think at the end of this, I think Dom has to die. I think at the end of the day, I think Vin Diesel cannot make it out alive.
That would be really interesting.
Yeah, and then he's the one that carries the Toretto name. And then Mia is badly injured but makes it out alive, but Dom doesn't. I think that's, in my eyes, that's how this movie ends, is Dom ultimately sacrifices himself for the family, gets a 45-minute monologue of some sorts, and then, sacrifices himself for the team.
I could see it going 2 ways. I really like that. I want that now. I want Jacob to come back and help continue the family and be a supportive member of the family. Because I think John Cena would stay on forever. I think he'd be really like chill. Like as long as these are satisfying movies and people are enjoying it, I'll stay on forever for whatever sequels past this. But if he came back and had to die, I think there could be a really great moment where Brian comes back for the final movie or final 2 movies. Somehow John Cena, I would like them to get a scene, although with everything being CGI, I don't know how you choose what scenes to do. But I think there could be a really powerful moment near the third act of whatever the final film is, where Brian is about to die, just straight up gets shot, no questions, that's going to happen, and John Cena gets in the way and he dies. maybe not shot. I don't know. I'm thinking of the Suicide Squad where James Gunn showed Rick Flag's heart being stabbed to really be like, no, this isn't a fake out death. He's not coming back. If we had something like that with Jacob and saving Brian, I think that could justify doing a fake out death and having a real death so soon after.
Yeah, the only thing I'm worried about with a Brian death is because it already happened, like for real. So I think a Brian on-screen death,
not killing Brian, almost killing Brian,
yeah,
but gets in the way.
I just don't see a way that they bring Cody in to play for Paul Walker, and then Brian O'Connor dies in the movie. I just don't think. I think that'd be really tough, and I think that'd be a really difficult scene to do and still please an audience.
I don't think I explained it well enough.
No, you did. I'm just saying. I'm just thinking out loud here of like you could not kill that character. So if you would need somebody to sacrifice himself, like John Cena, that would make it. But I think I would want him to stay alive. I'd want Dom to sacrifice himself, or even the only way Brian could die in my mind is if Dom and Brian did it together.
Well, I don't want Brian to die at all. But if John Cena's going to die, or if John Cena's going to show up in another Fast and Furious movie but actually die, I don't see a scenario outside of him very directly saving Brian O'Connor where we would believe it or want it to happen. You know, like if he died for anybody else, we'd be like, okay, but he already fake died once, so he could come back. But if he died for Brian, I think we'd all be like, that is the most noble way to go out. Don't you fucking cheapen that. Don't you take that away from us because he fucking died for... you know?
You had me going there for a second. I was like, oh.
What?
I thought we were going to see tears.
I mean, if that actually happened in the theaters, you will. Will see tears. I will FaceTime middle of the night and be like, I'm crying right now. And everyone else will be like, shut up. Second biggest idiot in this theater. But yeah, cool. God, I want 2 more parts. Literally only because of Dante. What? This is our official tier list. Only almost 3 hours. Again, where did I fuck up, or where did Brad fuck up? But I have his kitty hostage, so he has to.
So I have to agree.
He had to choose everything, even when it was. I even orchestrated him disagreeing with me so that it seemed natural. Totally. Did you know that Dom killed his family? That video's below, and also Fast X recycled the worst character in Furious 7. You also are seeing on screen. Bye-bye. Follow Bradley Cooper on his socials. I'm going to do this so you can see the socials more. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye now.